W5FC.
Mr. Chairman, I need to make myself very clear. If we uplink now, Skynet will be in control of your military.
But you'll be in control of Skynet, right?
That is correct, sir.
Skynet.
Ho, 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 Skynet.
Oh, it is 9 o'clock, and it is time for Skynet. I don't have the maniacal laugh. I'll work on that, though. That was somebody else. This is Kilo Echo 5, India Charlie X-Ray. My name's Tom. We'll be starting Skynet now. Does anyone need to use the repeater? Please do so.
How was that? W29V.
I'm going to sign you up, Michael, for the Evil League of Evil. So be looking for that letter from Bad Horse. This is Kilo Echo 5, India Charlie X-Ray. My name is Tom, and I'll be your net control for this session of the DARC Skynet. Skynet is a weekly net called every Saturday night at 9 p.m. concerning the subject of astronomy. Our purpose is to help amateurs become familiar with the nighttime and daytime sky, astronomy, and space in general. This net is open to all amateurs interested in this topic, and we encourage your participation, comments, and suggestions for this net. Stations with priority or emergency traffic may enter the net at any time by using the pro sign break and your call sign very enthusiastically. This is a directed net, so please do not transmit without direction from net control. That would be me this evening. Stations are reminded to ID at the end of your transmissions. This weekly net operates on this frequency, which is 146.880 megahertz with a payload of 110.9er. Check-ins via Echolink are also possible using the W5FC-R station ID or Echolink node 37247. Tonight's topic, astronomy charts, pictures, and live audio links are available online. Just go to the club website, which is whiskey5friedchicken.org right now for a complete list. And remember to tell others about this popular net. The net is 90 minutes long and is structured in several parts. We may abbreviate this a little bit this evening, but we'll see. General announcements, tasks of Dallas events, National Space Society, discussion topic of the evening selected by the NCS, that would be me. Space exploration, space history was up. Topic or constellation of the week, space launches of the week, recent astronomical discoveries, visible satellite passes over the next couple of days, astronomical Q&A in the 73 round. Let us start with low-power short-time check-ins. If you're one of those, please come now with your call sign phonetically, your name, where you're transmitting from. Let me know if you're low-power short-time.
November 5, Whiskey Oscar India, William and Allen. Short time.
This is Whiskey 5 Golf Uniform Sierra, Gus, far northeast Dallas, 2 watts.
Okay, I got N5WOI, William, over in Allen, he's short time, and W5GUS, Gus, in far away northeast Dallas on 2 watts, low power. Anyone else, low power short time, please come now. All right, let's go ahead and move on to general check-ins. If you'd like to join us this evening, please come now with your call sign, phonetically, your name, and where you're transmitting from. Here we go.
November 5, Bravo, Bill in Irving, and I definitely have some NSS news tonight.
November Tango 5, Tango Mike, Tony in Dallas.
Kilo Golf 5, Papa. Mike and Richardson, billions and billions of watts.
Whiskey 9 Mike Whiskey, Mike in Mansfield.
Kilo Foxtrot 5, Tango Sierra Kilo, Burl in Dallas.
Kilo, Foxtrot 5, Zulu, Bravo, Lima, Bill, Farmers Branch.
This is Kilo, Golf 5, Echo, India, Uniform, David, St. Paul, Texas.
Alpha Alpha 5, Alpha Hotel, Robert and Richards.
Whiskey 7, Kilo Yankee Golf, Calvin in Arlington.
Kilo 5, Kilo Tango X-Ray Kelly in Quinlan.
Kilo India 5, Echo Lima Papa, Vernon in Dallas.
Kilo India 5, Golf Romeo Hotel, Melissa in Dallas.
This is KC5KYM, Kilo Charlie 5, Kilo Yankee Mike, Chris in Frisco.
All right, that's a good place to pause. There may be a double in there. I don't know if it resolved or not, but if you do not hear your call, I'll try again on this next round. I've got N5BB, Bill in Irving, NT5TM, Tony, welcome back, Dallas, KG5P, Mike and Richardson, look smart. I put you at the top of the list for presentations. W9, Mike, Whiskey, that's Mike in Mansfield, welcome. KF5TSK, Berlin, Dallas, KF5ZBL, Mr. Bill, Farmers Branch, KG5EIU, David in St. Paul, AA5AH, Robert in Richardson, W7KYG, Calvin in Arlington, K5KTX, Miss Kelly in Quinlan, KI5ELP, that's Vernon in Dallas, welcome back. KI5GRH, Melissa in Dallas, congratulations, welcome to the Dallas Amateur Radio Club, we got you voted in. KC5KY, Chris in Frisco, I'll take additional check-ins, please come now.
KF5JHA, Chaz Mesquite.
Whiskey Bravo 5, Oscar Zulu Lima, Brenda in DeSoto.
Kilo Golf 5, Alpha Papa Lima, Patrick in Dallas.
Kilo Golf 5, Uniform, Kilo Uniform, David, Mesquite.
All right, got a few more on that one. We've got KF5JHA, Chaz and Mesquite, WB5OZL, Miss Brenda in DeSoto, KG5APL, that's Patrick in Dallas, and I got KG5UKU, David in Mesquite. There's one station I heard, I think you're on a handy talkie, I heard a Roger tone in there, probably on one of those Chinese radios, but if you would increase power or improve position, you were all noise. I couldn't make anything out except for the Roger beep. If you would like to try again, I'll take your call right now. Go ahead. All right, I'll take additional check-ins. Please come now, and then I'm going to go over to Echo Link. So additional check-ins, please come now with your call sign phonetic name. where you're transmitting from. All right, let me move over to Echolink and go ahead and check in. For some reason, I cannot type into the window there. I don't think it's frozen up. I'll reboot it here in a minute. But anyone over on Echolink like to join us, please come now. We'll give you extra time if you want to do it by voice. Otherwise, just type it in. Please come now. From KE5ICX, Echolink only.
Golf 5 Bravo Zulu Whiskey J near Weatherford.
This is M5YEO. Number 5 Yankee Echo Oscar Stephen San Antonio.
This is Kilo India 5, Bravo November Papa, Luis in forward.
November 5, Oscar Foxtrot, Claire Street.
Don in Norman, Oklahoma.
Kilo Foxtrot 5, Papa Delta Sierra, Lee in Sherman.
U0 MBC, Shane and
Bethany.
in Blue Springs, Missouri.
November 5, Oscar Foxtrot, Claire Mesquite.
All right, that's pretty healthy Echolink. Let me get everybody checked in. I got KG5BZWJ near Weatherford, N5YEO Stephen in San Antonio, K5BNP, that's Luis in Fort Worth, N5OF Clay over in Mesquite, K5JDW John in Norman, Oklahoma, K5PDS Miss Billy in Sherman, W0MBC, that's Shane, and Bethany over in Blue Springs, Missouri. Got y'all checked in. Any check-ins, any mode you'd like to check into tonight's net, please come now with your call sign, your name, and where you're transmitting from. Any mode. All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead and get into our announcements. Do we have any general announcements for tonight's net? They can be of ham, astronomical, space, or of general interest to licensed hams. Please come with your call sign.
November Tango 5, Tango Mike.
K5 KTX.
Okay, I've got NT5TM Tony and then K5KTX Miss Kelly. So we'll start with Tony, NT5TM. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Tom. This is a very historic weekend, and really, I've kind of got an embarrassment of riches to announce here. We're celebrating not only the 50th anniversary of Apollo 13, but Yuri's Night. So the legacy of the world's greatest successful failure and the very first successful launch of a human into outer space. So I hope everyone can check both the online links for Skynet and the links at w5sc.org for TechNet, because there are a lot of great resources up there. I have been spending as much time as I could today following the Apollo 13 mission in real time. They haven't had a problem yet, but there's been lots of work to do and lots of go-no-go decisions at different points in booster checkout. It's a lot of work to go into space, and frankly, you can learn a lot about that procedure by listening to what mission controllers do. There's more information about this Apollo in real time up at w5fc.org. I have not had a chance to follow the Yuri's Night webcast, but I hope it's still going on, and if you are interested in that, just look for Yuri's Night and webcast in your favorite search engine. Maybe there are recordings, because I know there were a lot of really great speakers scheduled. I just have been trying to do too many things at once, and I'm sad that I can't do all the things worthy of doing. And speaking of things worthy of doing, this is not the last net of the night. We do have an Afterglow movie discussion coming up at about 10:30-ish, maybe 10:35. Tonight's Afterglow movie is, of course, Apollo 13 from 1995. It's a fascinating movie. It's a big-budget production with actual zero-G, not people wearing harnesses, and a lot of things to talk about. So I hope you can join us tonight at 10:30, as well as participating here on Skynet, listening to Apollo 13 in real time, and maybe there's still some good Yuri's Night stuff going on. NT5TM.
Very good, and thank you, Tony. Yes, it's on YouTube. Yuri's Night is 2020 global webcast. I watched a little bit of it between TechNet and then this net, so I had a chance to see it. It's quite interesting. They have several astronauts on there, astronomers and space enthusiasts all talking. So I don't know how long it's going to go, maybe all night, but it's well worth it. It's had about 3,000 people on there the last time I looked watching. All right, next up is K5KTX. Miss Kelly, go ahead with your announcements.
Thank you, Tom. This is K5KTX. Mine's pretty quick. The board of the Texas Star Party made the difficult decision last week, middle of last week, or this past week, to cancel the Texas Star Party, which was scheduled to start on May the 17th and run right up to Memorial Day. At this time, they've not given a schedule yet for next year. They're working on it. They have some tentative dates, but they're not announcing anything yet. But this year's Star Party is canceled. Very sad. And that's all I've got. This is K5KTX.
All right, thank you, Miss Kelly. I'm sorry to hear that as well, but that's pretty much what everything's going on. Just to let you know, there are announcements. Tony gave some of them during TechNet. He puts up the TechNet news for each week over on the w5fc.org website. So you may want to go there, find out all things going on, both on the air and with the club itself. So he's got a very detailed list of things going on. Go there and you'll get all the information that he covered earlier and much, much more. All right, there was another station. We'll try again. You're very light into the repeater, so try one more time. All right, I'm going to try something a little different this evening. Instead of going through the same things that I cover, or we cover each week about AMSAT and that information is available online. Go there and amsatnet.org, you'll find out information about those nets. And then also, let me go ahead and give a quick announcement on the Afterglow Movie Net. This is my opportunity to crow and give my funny synopses. So here we go. For tonight's Afterglow movie, which Tony covered, but let me tell you the specifics. Jim Lovell looked at the stopped-up sink. His wife, Marilyn, stared at her husband. He'd been to the moon and back, yet how come he couldn't clear a stopped-up drain? Lovell grabbed the plunger and shouted into his sleeve, Houston, I've begun transposition and docking, and rammed the rubber suction device into the kitchen sink. All to no available. The standing water just stood there, unmoved by his heroic efforts. Marilyn spoke to her husband. Honey, call the local plumber. He'll fix it. You're negative on that. I'm going 100% oxygen, so I cannot hear you. Over. And with that, Lovell donned his A7L spacesuit helmet and turned the oxygen level to 11. Join us for the next Afterglow movie, Apollo 13, to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the film and the 50th anniversary of the actual flight, which is today, in fact. Expect 7 Delta V's of separation with Kevin Bacon, tonight at 10:30. All right, I'm going to go to Bill, N5BB. You had a National Space Society announcement, so go right ahead, and we'll go with you next from KE5ICX.
Thank you, Tom of the Net. This is N5BB. Well, due to the COVID-19 shutdown, the National Space Society meeting tomorrow will be virtual. So all NSS North Texas chapter members have received a email with the login information for the WebEx event, which I'm hosting. But there was another very special event this morning at 9 o'clock for National Space Society members. The National Space Society has got a series of essentially webinars, and they're called Breakfast on the Moon. And they're going through all of the Apollo missions. And so now we're on Apollo 13. So this is Breakfast on the Moon number 3. So it was played this morning over Zoom. And it was incredibly interesting. There are a lot of things happening in April here, and we talked about all of them on this conference call. The big one, of course, is Apollo 13, April the 11th, 1970. 50 years ago today to the date. And then, though, we have Yuri's Night, which was April the 12th, 1961. We had the first space shuttle launch, which was April the 12th, tomorrow, 1981, 20 years after Yuri Gagarin went up. And then we had the 30th anniversary of the Hubble Space Telescope, which was April 24th, 30 years ago, so 1970. So a lot of anniversaries. So on the conference call this morning, they had a long taped interview with Jim Lovell. So I just sent an email out to a lot of you here on the net, Tom and many of the others. You should look at your email. You'll see the link. It's to YouTube, the same thing they played this morning from Jim Lovell. It was a long interview with him. And this interview is recent. It's within the last couple of weeks. They were talking about the COVID-19 shutdown. Jim Lovell is 92 years old, but he's sharp and quick as ever, as you can see in the interview. Really neat guy. So during the meeting, Jim Lovell talked about Apollo 13, and his story, if I remember it correctly from what he said this morning on this call, was that the root cause was that some parts of the system that failed were swapped out for some reason. I can't remember exactly why, but they were swapped out. The whole system was. And they had two different voltages they'd been messing with. They'd been messing with some 24-volt systems and some 60-volt systems. This involved testing of it, okay? And unfortunately, they forgot to swap the contactors, the relays, to the 60-volt relays. So when they installed it in the Apollo 13, it had a 60-volt or 64-volt system, but they had 24-volt relays. And so the contacts that was during testing. And evidently during testing on the ground, I'm talking about, that's what I should have been saying. And during testing on the ground, the contacts evidently welded shut, and they caused the wires to essentially burn up. The insulation was burned off of them. And so when they were up in space and they activated that same circuit, those wires were damaged because when they tested it, they burned up the wires accidentally without realizing it. Nobody bothered to go in and look at it. Anyway, that's the story he said this morning. I believe that's on the interview that's on the YouTube link. Other people that were on the this long call were people talking about Urie's night and people talking about the space shuttle. So Anita Gale, G-A-L-E, she was one of the technical people designing the space shuttle. She was on that team, and so she gave a lot of discussion about her and the fact that women engineers were largely ignored. And somebody that made a very rude comment about her was later fired. So anyway, she was talking a lot about that. Also, William Johnson was on. William Johnson was the Lockheed program manager for the Hubble Space Telescope, which was launched 30 years ago. And he had a long talk about the testing they did with it, and the Perkin-Elmer optic error, and all that kind of stuff in the mirror, the very slight error. So anyway, it was a very, very interesting meeting. This meeting was sponsored by the National Space Society and by the Sacramento section of the L5 Society. That's all I've got right now in 5BB. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Bill. Yep, I read the accident report. Yeah, I'm one of those guys that does that, and read all about it. And it was I'll only say this very briefly since I don't cover it in my part of the presentation, but the Apollo 12 service module tank was dropped, and it was removed from the service module, and then the one that was in Apollo 13 or destined for Apollo 13 went into Apollo 12. The Apollo 12 tank, it's not like you have spares with this stuff. They're building them on an assembly line. Was moved to Apollo 13. It was supposedly checked, but there were problems with the tank. Also, as time went on, the thing they wanted to do was a drain and fill capability. They wanted to drain the tank quickly at the Cape, so they come up with a new relay system that allowed them to do it much more quickly than they could before. Unfortunately, the tank had the older relay system in it, and that was not checked. That was a series of failures that caused that. So it was that simple transposition that occurred, which ended up with the catastrophic failure. All right, this is KE5ICX. I am net control for tonight's Skynet. It's all space stuff, mostly Apollo, but not completely. I'm going to go to Mike, KG5P. Mike has unfortunately been pushed aside 2 weeks in a row. So I decided to put him at the very top of the list tonight. So go check the list there. He's going to be doing Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Month. Actually, he's got Stars of the Month. So Mike, KG5P, the net is yours. Finally. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you very much, my friend Tom. So, what I have here, instead of droning on for 40 minutes on a topic nobody cares anything about, I'm only going to drone on it for 10 minutes on a topic that nobody cares everybody about. Hint, hint. Hello, anybody home? Maybe not. Okay, but anyway, thank you for Tom, I appreciate it. So, what I'd like to talk about is the Sky Safari 6 Pro program that Kelly mentioned a couple of weeks ago. Now, I've used previous versions of this program on my cell phone. This is a cell phone app, or you can use it on a tablet. And the ones I've used have had fewer features, and I found them useful. Now, the latest version, this version 6, has a mountain of data in its database. Approximately 1.2 gigabyte download, so you're not going to do this on your jitterbug phone. Okay? If all this information were printed, it would probably fill an entire bookshelf. Now, I'm not selling this thing. I don't care if you buy it or not. I don't care. But you can simulate the sky plus or minus 10,000 years. You can control your telescope. You can look up 10 million stars. That's million. 10 million stars. And you can look up over 3 million galaxies and over 770,000 solar system objects, including every comet and every asteroid ever discovered. Is that cool or what? And this is all for the price of 2 6-packs of beer. Well, maybe 3 6-packs of really cheap, unpalatable beer, but I don't drink that stuff anymore. So if you're interested, go to the website. I'm not selling it. You can buy it. You can not buy it. I don't care. But for me, it's a fantastic deal. So tonight's talk, I've selected a lot of this information right off of the screen prints, and I've so I don't go drone on forever. Hint, hint. I'm going to I've abbreviated it. Now, one of my favorite stars, and you can see this time of the year, and this is, if you have a go-to mount, first you have to calibrate it. And what you have to do is go to, I like to use Capella, Castor, and Pollux, which are on the western horizon. And then I have other calibration stars on the eastern horizon. But I'm going to talk about Castor, Capella, and Pollux. But believe me, there's tons of more information in this app that I'm going to talk about tonight. So, I've abbreviated this information, but and most of these apps include a Wi-Fi function. So if you connect a Wi-Fi dongle to your go-to mount, you can slew your telescope directly to the object, see what you want to see, just by pointing and selecting it. Now, this replaces the mount's hand controller, so it makes it very easy to do. Now, I'm not what they call a star hopper. It's a skill you have to develop. I know Kelly is. She lives in a dark sky, and it's a skill you have to develop, and it takes it takes practice and takes time. And so I use a go-to mount, and this is a perfect go-to mount for me. And I've been using this for years. So moving on, we'll talk about Capella, and this is one of my calibration stars. A very bright star. It's in the southwest, and you can eyeball it real easy. It's a distance of about 42 light years from Earth, and it's one of the sky's most famous spectroscopic binary stars. In 1889, it was discovered that the Capella was a binary based on spectroscopic observations. Photographic plates showed that the second spectrum superimposed over the first, it showed a Doppler shift, and this showed that there were two components moving toward and away from the Earth, i.e. they were orbiting each other. Now these two stars just blow the edge of visibility in the best telescopes. They were just below the best visibility, so you really can't see them. They're just Doppler spectrographic. So, but they're known as Capella Alpha A and Alpha B, and both of these have roughly the same surface temperature as the Sun, but are much more larger and brighter. So I'm going to switch over to see what Tom has, if he's shown any of these. And if you don't have Tom's link, you really need to do it. I mean, y'all have computers, so why not, you know? But I'm showing these are exact screen prints that Tom has directly from the app. It's a fantastic app, and I wish I owned it. I wish I got royalties from it, but I don't. I just like it. So, Capella also has a faint companion that in itself is a double. So this is a complex network of stars. And these are made up of two dim red class M stars, which they call them Capella H and L, but you can't see those. Now, evolution. Let's talk about evolution. Most stars, the Capella Alpha A and Alpha B, are giant dying giants that cease functioning, fusing hydrogen in their cores. They were once both class B dwarfs, but the brightest star is significantly more massive and hence more evolved, and almost certainly has begun fusing its internal helium into carbon. The dimmer component has yet to fire it up, but it's still, the Capella system itself is a source of X-rays. Now, you've all heard of Castor and Pollux, you know, they're astrological nonsense. They're the twins. You may be even born, possibly, under the twins. But basically, they're the Castor and Pollux are the two stars that give the constellation Gemini its name, because they're the twins. And these are the ones that I use as calibration stars, because they're very easy to see in a dark sky. Not in Richardson, but you go to the Texas Star Party, and they're very easy to see. The Arabs have their own name for it. The Chinese recognize Pollux as Yang, you know, the yin and yang, that whole deal. The Hindus also have their names for it. So physically, Castor and Pollux are nothing alike. Two totally different stars, even though they look alike. Pollux is a single, cool, yellow-orange giant. Castor is a complex sextuple, which means like six-system star system composed of hot bluish, white alpha stars and red dim dwarf stars. Pollux is also closer, approximately 34 light years away, as opposed to 50 for Castor. Pollux has a cool surface. It's a yellow-orange star, and you can eyeball this. You can just look up there and you can see. Pollux is yellow-orange color. It's metal-rich, and the star is known to be an X-ray emitter. Now, on the other hand, you have Castor, the alpha Castor, Alpha Gemorium Castor. And Castor is the 23rd brightest stars in the sky. Easy to eyeball. And originally the Bear designation designated it as Alpha Gemini, but it's now suggested that these stars may have changed in luminosity over the past 4 centuries since Bear named them. And Pollux is a giant orange star, and Castor is contrasting white. Now, that probably didn't happen. That just might have been a mistake, and we don't know. So Castor has no physical relation to Pollux. They're 2 different stars, 2 different distances. Castor is 51 light years and is half again as far away. And in fact, Castor is a complex system of 6 stars and 3 binary groupings, all mutually orbiting each other. You know, maybe that was the star system of Isaac Asimov's Nightfall. Who knows? Castor was first discovered to be a visual binary in 1678 by Giovanni Cassini. That was a famous Cassini division. But it's the first gravitationally bound object observed beyond the solar system. It's a fine double star for medium amateur telescopes. Okay, now there's a picture that Tom we have up by now. Well, I guess he doesn't. But there's I sent him a photo of Castor, of the 2 binary components of Castor, and this image I have was by a 16th-inch bead, which I think that Chaz has. So it's easily observable with with telescopes available by an amateur. Now, each of these components of Castor again is a spectroscopic binary, making Castor a quadruple star system, and they circle each other at a distance about 1/10 Mercury's distance from the Sun. Now, there's another component of Castor called Castor C, which is really not terribly significant because it's a 8.8 red dwarf, a little bit south, and it's also a spectroscopic binary. So you can see Castor is just a big mess. It's also an eclipsing binary, and in fact, it's only one of the few known eclipsing binary systems where both components are red dwarfs. Okay, I'm gonna end here pretty quickly because I do want the other folks to make their presentations. But as far as evolution goes, these star systems like Castor are thought to form when they're contracting birth cloud stars, or birth clouds divide and then divide again because of rapid rotation. Castor is a member of a group widely dispersed stars known as Castor Moving Group, just by name. It also includes things like Vega, Fomalhaut, and another star that I use in Libra as a calibration star is Zubilin-Algubi. Yeah, right. The properties of the whole system suggest an age for these member stars to be about 400 million years. So I'm gonna stop now. I will turn this back over to the net, and I will give time for the other presenters to continue. So back to that KG5P. Thank you very much, Tom. Indeed, you're our good friend.
Okay, very good, Bill. And Mike, I'm sorry, why did I say Bill? But Mike, yes. The Sky Safari, website is skysafariastronomy.com. That's all one word, skysafariastronomy.com. And there's various platforms that you can use to install the application. So this is pretty cool. It's also available for the Mac computer. I don't know if it's got PC or not. I don't see it on here, but I do see it listed. Okay, thanks very much. And this is KE5ICX. I'm Net Control for tonight's Skynet. So let's see. As Net Control, I get to talk about a topic. I actually found this article. I had to pilfer it from elsewhere. However, I'm going to add my own comments to it. It does have to do with Apollo 13 and how accurate the movie is compared to the actual mission. I thought that was kind of an interesting thing to look up. I have my own personal comments, as you can imagine, and I've shared them many times before on some of the things, but certainly not all of them. So I'm going to go ahead and read through the article, and then I'm going to comment through it. If you want to watch online, you can see the pictures that I'm sharing online. I think also it's on w5fc.org with some of the hot links. So here we go. Movies based on real-life events often stretch the truth for dramatic effect, but how far did the 1995 Apollo 13, starring Tom Hanks, Kevin Bacon, and Bill Paxton, sway from the actual events of the Apollo 13 mission that happened 50 years ago, actually today? All right, well, there are a few things that they got right and some of which they fudged a bit. During liftoff, the center engine of the Saturn V's 5-engine shut down. This actually happened. Let's see. This actually happened. To account for it, the remaining 4 engines were burned for about 34 seconds longer than planned, according to NASA. In the movie, a panel shows lights for each of the 5 engines. The 4 that were working properly were on, but the center one was blinking. In reality, the center light would simply have been off. In Apollo 13, the movie, the light was purposely made to blink to get the viewer's attention. The movie makers knew the actual operation, but chose to take this license for dramatic effect, said Dave Scott, the Apollo 15 commander and technical advisor for the film. The third stage of the rocket was also burned longer to put Apollo 13 into orbit. This wasn't shown in the movie. Now, I do have one comment about this. I watched the film last night with the Afterglow movie gang. We watch at 8 o'clock at night and go until the movie is over. There is another mistake I noticed in this, and that is that they don't show the engine out on the first stage. The first stage is already fallen away, and the big interstage ring, for some reason, inexplicably nothing happens there, and suddenly the second stage is firing, and they show the inboard engine out on the panel, which is not true. That was the Saturn V. So just a small mention of that. All right, so Houston, we've got a problem, or we've had a problem. For years, people thought the mission commander, Jim Lovell, portrayed by Hanks, said, Houston, we have a problem. People even still utter those words to this day. But what Lovell said was, Houston, we've had a problem. This discrepancy was known when the movie was filmed. According to NASA, the writers decided to keep the more commonly known phrase for the sake of the drama. Also, as for who said what and when, the movie almost got it perfect. Here's the radio transcript from NASA. Schweigert, okay, Houston. Lovell, Houston. Schweigert, I believe we had a problem here. Capcom Jack Losma says, this is Houston. Say again, please. And Lovell says, Houston, we've had a problem. We've had a main bus B undervolt. And that's rather quick. Turning the lunar module into a lifeboat. 2001 interview with NASA's Ken Mattingly, the original command module pilot who was grounded due to the exposure to the German measles, said turning the lunar module into a lifeboat wasn't something that was made up on the spot. NASA had practiced it Quote, movies and everything makes it look like we invented a lot of stuff. Well, thanks to the kind of simulation training we had, maybe the things weren't exactly the same or exactly in the same order, but everything we ended up doing had been done somewhere, Mattingly said. He said he vaguely remembered an earlier simulation in which the atmosphere in the command module was contaminated and had to be vented, so the crew had to move to the lunar module. Now, I will say this, and there's a thing on Gene Kranz here that I'll read to you, but this was practice, and in fact, nobody ever thought that with redundant systems the entire command module would fail, but it was practice in one of the simulations that were done. So that is outlined, by the way, in Failure is Not an Option by Gene Kranz's book that you should read if you've not. And speaking of Gene Kranz, he was played by Ed Harris and never declared that phrase, failure is not an option. Asked Kranz what he actually told flight controllers, and he rattles it off without a moment's hesitation a half-century later. He says, I have never lost an American in space, sure as hell aren't going to lose one now. This crew is coming home. You've got to believe it. Your team must believe it, and we must make it happen. Kranz said the movie makers came up with a failure is not an option. Does he wish he'd said it? He says, no, I'm satisfied with what I said. And then the CO2 scrubber fix. One of the problems with the lunar module lifeboat was the carbon dioxide scrubbers were not meant to support 3 men for 4 days. The scrubbers in the command module were different and had to be adapted. There's a scene in the movie that shows some of NASA's brightest trying to build an adapter using a bunch of items you can only find on the spacecraft. This just isn't a contingency we even remotely looked at, says one engineer. In the real world, not only had they looked at it, Mattingly said they had simulated something similar. An Apollo 8 simulation tackled the problem of what to do if one of the cabin fans had jammed up due to a screw that floated loose. Quote, the solution that they came up with was that they would make a way to use the vacuum cleaner in the command module with some plastic bags cut up and taped to the lithium hydroxide cartridges and blow through it with a vacuum cleaner, Mattingly said. Well, on 13, someone says, you remember what we did with that on that sim? Who did that? So in short, Joe up and we talked about how did you build that bag and what did you do? Mattingly said that they solved the problem for Apollo 13 in about an hour or two, but another half hour was spent building the demonstration model. Now, in the power-up procedures, in the movie, an engineer named John Aaron, yes, that John Aaron, try SCE to AUX, that's a whole nother story, is tasked with trying to figure out how to power up the command module using the ship's batteries, and Mattingly is in the simulator helping him figure it out. In real life, Aaron was put in charge of the project, but they didn't figure it out in the simulator. You don't do things that way. It was a good way of conveying the story to the public, and we'd have to work on it. But the public could never have followed the real magnificence of having this group of people lying around doing all these pieces at a time, Mattingly said. However, the simulators were used to practice the procedure so they could explain to Schweikert what to do when the time came to power up. Mattingly added the tension seemed in the movie of Lovell wanting NASA to send up the procedures was real. Jim had become apprehensive about where are my procedures, and he kept being told, they're coming, stand by. I think Jim probably was really very much apprehensive because they didn't have any idea what to do at all, Mattingly said. Here is one transmission Lovell sent to Mission Control according to NASA. Vance Brand, I believe. We've got to realize that we've got to establish a work-rest cycle up here, so we can't just wait around here to just read procedures up at the time all the time up to the burn. We've got to get them here, look at them, and then we've got to get people to sleep. So take that into consideration when you get ready to send up the pads. So the final power-up. In the film, NASA figures out how it can get extra power it needs to fire up the command module by transferring some from the lunar module. By the way, Mattingly describes it, it seems the power transfer was just a bonus. So he says, got it all up to Schweigert, and as you know, it all worked. One of the last things we did in the procedure was we, by then, had noticed that we actually had extra electrical power in the lunar module batteries, said Mattingly. Somebody came in and found a way to do a jumper cord and take battery power out of the lunar module and top off the command module, and to use that power to help get the command module stuff started so we didn't have to use all the power from the batteries. So we ended up with a good margin on the batteries. The re-entry blackout. The dramatic scene at the end of the Apollo's re-entry and longer than expected blackout is fairly accurate in the movie. The blackout did last longer than expected, even longer than what was portrayed in the movie. Blackouts last 3 minutes. If they were not back in 4, we'll know. A NASA spokesman tells the reporter in the movie, implying that it will mean the spacecraft burned up. Mission Control waits with tension and dramatic music. The clock passes 4 minutes before they see the chutes open on the spacecraft. In real life, it took 6 minutes. Air and Space Museum talked to Krantz about it. Blackout was 1 minute 27 seconds longer than predicted. Toughest minute and a half I've ever had, Krantz said. So why the long blackout? Odyssey's unexpectedly shallow entry angle may have made the blackout period last longer than expected, NASA said on its website, although this has been a favorite topic of speculation. The original reports do not pay any heed to it. On the other side of the blackout, the first words you hear in the movie are Lovell saying, "Houston, this is Odyssey. It's good to see you again." That leads to an eruption of cheers in Mission Control. In reality, the first message was simpler and not from Lowell. "Okay, Joe," said Schweigert, speaking to Capcom Joe Kerwin. One thing that was accurate with the scene, this is moisture on the accelerator I put down as a thing. This is on re-entry. One thing that was accurate with the scene, according to Lovell's recounting of the mission, is that it rained inside the command module during re-entry because of the condensation. The other things that the movie got right, shortly after the explosion, Flight Director Harris's Krantz says, "Let's work the problem, people. Let's not make things worse by guessing." That was almost word for word what Krantz told flight controllers. According to NASA's transcripts, Krantz said, "Let's solve the problem, but let's not make it any worse by guessing." As the crew tries to get the lunar module powered up, Lovell asks Mission Control to double-check his arithmetic. Hanks is seen furiously doing the math on a card and then calls out his numbers. NASA says this really did happen. In fact, the card that Lovell wrote the numbers on was sold at auction in 2011 for nearly $389,000. And yes, the numbers that Hanks reads out are the actual figures. There's a scene near the end where Mission Control is concerned about Odyssey's re-entry approach corridor because they didn't have the ballast from the moon rocks on board. NASA says this was a concern, but it was a bit exaggerated for the movie. They didn't necessarily need to make up for the weight of the moon rocks as much as to make sure the weight distribution was correct. So the concern was more about where to store things before re-entry. And that is the end of the article. However, as you might expect, I have one beef with this movie that everybody knows. And if you don't know, you will know, which means everybody will know. I have it on the screen if you want to see it. And it shows the two Saturn V's taking off. The real one on the left, with a wonderful roll pattern and the one on the right with the wrong roll pattern. It is obviously different, very different. There's a whole bunch of things wrong with the rockets. So just to briefly summarize, you'll see that the third stage has, on the real rocket, a solid ring going around it. In fact, all missions, all Apollo missions, Apollo Saturn missions, have the solid ring on the S-4B for all flights. It was only the 500F, which was a facilities rocket, and it was a hodgepodge of various components that were cobbled together in order to simulate a real moon rocket to test out the launch umbilical tower, the tower that actually sits next to the rocket during liftoff. So it had a bit of craziness to it when you saw it. The second thing you'll see as well is the interstage ring between the second stage and the first stage, and it shows some ullage rockets. These are protrusions that look like mini rockets on the side, and there are 4 of them by Apollo 13. They show 8 in the mission, which was originally what flew on Apollo 4 and Apollo 5. I'm sorry, Apollo 4 and Apollo 6, I'll get it right. And they started deleting them starting with Apollo 8, so that was wrong. And then finally, the very base, the Saturn V first stage, they painted down the black roll pattern because of heat. Because of the Florida heat, they started painting the rocket more white than black. The roll patterns were there so that you could see on a camera which quad or section of the rocket was facing the camera at the time. So they were unique, all unique, and that's why they were done that way. It's not to be pretty, although they do that a little bit too. So there you have it. All right, so that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Don't forget to come back tonight, talk about Apollo 13 at 10:30 p.m. This is KE5ICX. I'm Net Control. I'll take additional check-ins, and then we'll go on to space exploration and space history. So additional check-ins. Anybody like to join us this evening? Please come now.
Kilo, Foxtrot 5, Quebec, Delta, Quebec, Eric and Garland.
I have KF5QDQ, that's Eric and Garland. There was another station, you doubled with Eric, so please come again.
So Golf 5, Zulu, Mike, Golf, Joe in Arlington.
All right, I've got KG5ZMG, that's Joe in Arlington. Welcome, Joe. And I forgot to mention Philip, he's over on Facebook. I've got K5KOB, he's in Crandall. His antenna is down right now, but he is listening in some way, somehow, so we got him checked in. Okay, Miss Brenda, WB5OZL, you're up with space exploration and space history. Please go ahead.
Thank you. This is WB5OZL. Surprise! The universe's expansion rate may vary from place to place. The universe may not be the same in every direction after all. The expansion rate of the universe appears to vary from place to place in new study reports. This finding, if confirmed, would force astronomers to reassess just how well they understand the cosmos. One of the pillars of cosmology, the study of the history and fate of the entire universe, is that the universe is isotropic, meaning the same in all directions. Study lead author Konstantinos Migas of the University of Bonn in Germany said in a statement, "Our work shows there may be cracks in that pillar." The universe has been expanding continuously for more than 13.8 billion years ever since the Big Bang, and at an accelerating rate thanks to a mysterious force called dark energy. Equations based on Einstein's general theory of relativity suggest that this expansion is isotropic on large spatial scales, Migas wrote Tuesday, April 7th, in a blog post about the new study. Observations of the cosmic microwave background, that's CMB, the universe pervading radiation level over from the Big Bang supports this notion, he added. The CMB seems to be isotropic, and cosmologists extrapolate this property of the very early universe to our current epoch, nearly 14 billion years later. But it's unclear how valid this extrapolation is, he stressed, noting that dark energy has been the dominant factor of the universe's evolution over the last 4 billion years or so. Dark energy's baffling nature has not yet allowed astrophysicists to understand it properly, Migas wrote. Therefore, assuming it to be isotropic is almost a leap of faith for now. This highlights the urgent need to investigate if today's universe is isotropic or not. Anniversary, May 8th, 1964, Gemini 1 was launched. I said Gemini for so many years, I'm having trouble correcting myself. Gemini 1 was the first mission in NASA's Gemini program, an uncrewed test flight of the Gemini spacecraft. Its main objectives were to test the structural integrity of the new spacecraft and modified Titan II launch vehicle. It is also the first test of the new tracking and communication systems for the Gemini program and provided training for the ground support crews for the first manned missions. Originally scheduled for launch in December 1963, difficulties in the development of both the spacecraft and its booster caused 4 months of delay. Gemini 1 was launched from Launch Complex 19 at Cape Kennedy, now Canaveral, Florida, on April 8, 1964. The spacecraft stayed attached to the second stage of the rocket. The mission lasted for 3 orbits while test data were taken, but the spacecraft stayed in space for almost 64 orbits until its orbit decayed due to atmospheric drag. The spacecraft was not intended to be recovered, and holes were drilled through its heat shield to ensure it would not survive re-entry. And on April 9th, 1959, the Mercury 7 astronauts were selected. Mercury 7 were the group of 7 astronauts selected to fly spacecraft for Project Mercury. They are also referred to as the original 7 and Astronaut Group 1. Their names were publicly announced by NASA on April 9th, 1959. These 7 original American astronauts were Scott Carpenter, Gordon Cooper, John Glenn, Gus Grissom, Wally Schirra, Alan Shepard, and Deke Slayton. The Mercury 7 created a new profession in the United States, establishing the image of the American astronaut for decades to come. And they all got to fly in space. All right, back to net. This is WB5OZL.
All right, thank you, Ms. Brenda, and thank you for the report. This is KE5ICX Net Control for tonight, Skynet. Let's move on to, do I dare say it, Chaz, K5JHA. What do you have for us on What's Up from KE5ICX?
Well, thank you, Net Control. Hello, everyone. I'm usually on before Buck Rogers, but it's already on. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you just don't know me. And that's a joke, and if you don't understand that, it's okay, too. Yes, this is Chaz, KF5JHA, and my degree is in astrophysics, and I work at Brookhaven College, and we call this segment of Skynet What's Up. Last week, I covered moon phases and promised to talk about Easter this week because it has a connection to a full moon. So here we go. Many holidays on our current calendar are fixed to a date, like Valentine's Day is always February 14th, and St. Patrick's Day is March 17th, and Christmas is December 25th. Some holidays are defined as the first Monday of the month, like Labor Day, or the last Monday of the month, like Memorial Day, or the fourth Thursday of a month. You know what that one is. Yeah, it's Thanksgiving. Then there is this holiday, Easter, that's somewhere in between the dates of March 22nd through April 25th of each year. Why? The simple explanation is Easter is the first Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox, but it's a little bit more complicated than that, and let's explore this. Before we get started on Easter, let's have an Easter bunny joke. So what do you call a rabbit with fleas? Now wait a moment. I think I see some hands raised out there. Oh, you, over there, in the back, left-hand corner. What do you call a rabbit with fleas? Bugs Bunny. Okay, I think it's funny. This is KF5JHA, and this is Skynet. The determination of Easter has to do with a lunar calendar and not as much to do with a modified Gregorian calendar that we use today. The Gregorian calendar is primarily a solar calendar. Several religions use a lunar-based calendar to celebrate holidays. The Chinese celebrate their New Year on the first day of the first lunar month of their year, but that doesn't fall on January 1st, and it varies. The Chinese calendar is based upon both a moon and a sun calendar, so it's considered a lunisolar calendar. Ramadan is celebrated by the Islamic religion by using their Islamic calendar, which is primarily a lunar calendar. Maybe we should talk about some facts first. The Earth does not orbit the Sun in an even number of days. It takes approximately 365 days, 5 hours, 48 minutes, and 46 seconds to orbit the Sun. This is called the tropical year, or the year of the seasons. It's the length of time to go from one vernal equinox to the next vernal equinox. I could use the sidereal year, which compares the Earth's orbit to the background stars, which is approximately 365 days, 6 hours, 9 minutes, and 9 seconds, which is about 20 minutes, 24 seconds longer than the tropical year. Yeah. Am I throwing all these numbers out just because I know how to do it? Yes. But I'm not going to use that. Why are these different years, different lengths? That's another discussion for another time. Since the Earth goes around the Sun in 365 days and a fraction, we'll use 365 days of the year. Then after a while, we have a calendar that's off by a few days, then a few weeks, and a few months. And Christmas will be celebrated during the hottest part of the year for the Northern Hemisphere. So what we do is we add an extra day every 4 years. But not always. There are exceptions. When the year can be divided by 100, or is divisible by 400, or, well, you get the idea. The Mayans had a different idea for a calendar. They had 12 months that each had 30 days, a total of 360 days a year. And every 6 years, they added an extra month to synchronize it with the sun. If you think all that's confusing, let's talk about the moon. The moon phase cycle, or the synodic month, going from one new moon to the next new moon, is approximately 29.53058791 days long. Dividing the number of days in the year by the number of days in the synodic lunar month does not give a nice even whole number of days. The Gregorian calendar year and the synodic lunar month gets shifted around all the time. A full moon does not always happen on the same day of each month. I hope that much is understandable anyway. Now, back to our story of when the date of Easter. Easter, or Resurrection Day, is celebrated in the spring. It is connected to the Jewish holiday of Passover, which is also held in the spring. Passover is the celebration of when God freed the Hebrew people and Moses led them out of ancient Egypt. Actually, I just watched the Ten Commandments earlier today. This celebration has gone on for thousands of years. The Jewish people tried to visit or have a pilgrimage to the temple in Jerusalem during Passover. It took some time to travel by foot, depending on how long or how far away they were. And if you could afford a donkey, you'd go faster, but traveling at night would speed up the trip. But no streetlights would make for hazardous travel. And no, they didn't have streetlights back then. But a full moon would allow nighttime travel. Passover is celebrated on the 15th day of the Jewish month of Nisan, which would place the Passover in the middle of the lunar month. So right around full moon. This is a lunisolar calendar. Since the 4th century, the dates have been mathematically determined, you'll like that, Billy, for Passover. Historically, we know that Christ's trial and crucifixion happened during Passover. By an agreement of the Council of Nicaea, I think this is a cool picture that I picked out, in the year 325, they set the date of the vernal equinox as always March 21st for the purposes of calculating Easter. In reality, with leap years, the equinox varies from March 19th, which it was on this year, to March 22nd. So having the equinox for calculating Easter to be always on March 21st makes the calculation a little bit easier. Now, in 2020, the vernal equinox was on March 19th at 10:49 p.m. Central Daylight Time, and the first full moon after that was April the 7th, that was just a few days ago, at 9:35 p.m. Central Daylight Time. And Sunday after that is April the 12th. That date is tomorrow. And now you know more than you wanted to know about the length of the year, the length of the lunar cycle, and the possible dates for Easter. The moon was full on April the 7th, I just told you that, and the current phase of the moon is a waning gibbous. The moon will be at its third quarter on April the 14th, and it will be at new moon on April the 22nd. The Lyrid meteor shower peaks right at new moon on April 21st and 22nd, with about 18 meteors per hour. Remember, more meteors are usually seen in the morning sky, the hour before morning twilight. So get up early on April the 22nd rather than staying late on April the 21st. And this is KF5JJ, and this is Skynet. On April the 15th, no, that's not tax day. The IRS has moved that till July the 15th this year. Anyway, on April the 15th, in the early morning sky, you can observe the moon and Saturn in conjunction. And on the Mars on the left and Jupiter's on the right, it'll make a great sight. I hope it's clear that night, or I should say that morning, so you can take a picture of it. It'll be great. On April the 21st, if it is clear, you get up about 6:30 in the morning, you might be able to spot a thin crescent moon in the east. If you're lucky, you might find Mercury just to the left of the moon. Mercury is usually difficult to find in twilight sky, but by using the moon as your guide, it'll make it a much easier job. And finally, on April the 26th in the evening sky, you can spot the moon and Venus in the horns of Taurus the bull. You won't have to get up early for that. Don't forget that the Texas Astronomical Society had a Zoom club meeting in March, and we'll probably have a virtual meeting on Friday, April the 24th. And no parking lot requirements. Isn't that awesome? TAS will resume face-to-face meetings and public observing stations on Saturday nights after all this is over. Check their website, texasastro.org, for details. Now, do any of you out there in Radio Land have a question or need a fill on any information? Or maybe just a general astronomy question? I don't know everything, but I may know the answer to your question. Come now with your call sign if you have any questions.
This is KG5P with a general astronomy question, or just a general question.
Now, Mike, I really like your questions because they usually require some sort of interesting answers. So, go ahead, Mike.
Well, I'm flattered that, $1 will get you a cup of coffee. So my question is, actually, here's what it is. Y'all know from watching Them, the 1957 movie with James Whitmore, the reason they knew they were ants is because they discovered in their footprints that they had formic acid. So my question to you is, what is formic acid?
I actually don't know. That's a great question. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, well, remember these are ants. And they had formic acid on their feet, and formic acid is the first ant acid. Vaccinate, KG5B.
Thank you so much. Okay, so a reminder, if you're a Brookhaven student, yes, we may have some Brookhaven students. We had some last week. If you're a Brookhaven student listening to Skynet or watching Skynet tonight, remember to fill out your form and email it to me within the next 48 hours so you can get credit for this. So as the moon wanes in the middle part of April, so do my words. I pray for the safety and health for all of you during these trying times. So until next time, keep looking up so you know what's up. This is Jazz, KF5JHA, back to our net control. Tom, get me out of here. Hey, do you have Wallace and Gromit? Have they said anything on Skynet tonight? Maybe they should.
Oh, thank you, Chaz. Yeah, I wore it because they did go to the moon once. Yeah, I'm wearing my Wallace and Gromit shirt. I found it a while looking at, well, I had to let somebody up into the attic take care of some work, and there it was, my Wallace and Gromit shirt, so I thought I'd bring it out. It's been a decade in storage, and I thought I'd wear it tonight. And by the way, I do have a dog named Gromit, so that tells you a lot right there. This is KE5ICX, I'm net control for tonight, Skynet, and you heard it right. Chaz is subjecting his exposing his students to Skynet. So they're out there watching. I know there's at least one, maybe two watching. And I did get a request to join the Facebook page, so I know that's true. That individual did not name you directly, Chaz, but said my instructor told me I had to do this. That was her words, not mine. All right, well, time is working out pretty well tonight. We jostled things around a little bit, so I'll just give a couple of things here on space launches. I was looking also for satellite passages, but there's really nothing very good this week out of all the normal ones we got. So I'll concentrate on the space launches for this week. Let's see. Let me check my dates here. Oh, that's old. That's old. Here's one. April 6th. Oh, there was a launch earlier this week, by the way, for the to the space station, MS-16 crew launched to the space station. So that went fine. There was a launch on, I think it was April 9th, for the Long March 3B in Pollux. That failed. Third stage of the rocket failed, and it is the second failure of a Long March rocket in a month. So I think the Chinese program is going to have to rethink and see what's going on with their heavy lift vehicle. April 16th will be a Falcon 9 Starlink 6 launch from SLC 40 over at Cape Canaveral. The SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket is expected to launch the seventh batch of approximately 60 satellites for SpaceX Starlink broadband network, a mission designated Starlink 6. Now we have a bunch of to be determined. I'm not sure if this is just because it's hard to know exactly when they're going to be ready for these missions or whether coronavirus has something to do with it. I suspect a little bit of both. We have a GSLV Mark II launching GSAT. This is at the Sriharikota, India Satish Dhawan Space Center in India. India's geosynchronous satellite launch Mark II, designated GSLV-F10, will launch India's first geo-imaging satellite, or GSAT-1. The GSAT-1 spacecraft will provide continuous remote sensing observations over the Indian subcontinent from geostationary orbit from more than 22,000 miles. Also, to be determined, the Electron Don't Stop Me Now, yeah, that's the name of the mission. Launch site will be Launch Complex 1 in Mahia Peninsula in New Zealand. A Rocket Lab Electron rocket will launch on its 12th flight on a ride-share mission. The rocket will carry 3 payloads into orbit for the National Reconnaissance Office, the U.S. government spy satellite agency, and the ADI-SITE CubeSat for Boston University, and NASA's CubeSat Launch Initiative, which will study Earth's magnosphere and space weather. The M2 Pathfinder satellite, a collaboration between the Australian government and the University of New South Wales Canberra Space, will also be launched on a communications and technology demonstration mission. Rocket Lab has nicknamed the launch Don't Stop Me Now, delayed from March 29th due to the coronavirus pandemic. There you go, the first. Also, we have the Falcon 9 Sailcom 1B, which will launch from Cape Canaveral, Florida. It hasn't been determined when. It will be a satellite, Sailcom 1B satellite for CONE, Argentina Space Agency, is the second of 2 Sailcom 1 series Earth observation satellites designed to provide radar imagery to help emergency responders and monitor the environment, including the collection of soil moisture measurements. It was delayed from the 4th quarter of 2019. The mission was originally scheduled to launch from Vandenberg Air Force Base, California. And then finally, Launcher 1, this is an inaugural flight, Cosmic Girl. This is a converted 747-400 from Virgin Atlantic, it's now Virgin Space, or Galactic, Mojave Desert and Spaceport, California. The Virgin Orbit Launcher 1 rocket will make its first orbital test flight after dropping from a modified Boeing 747 carrier aircraft over the Pacific Ocean off the coast of California. This is delayed from 2019. I have a model of that in my computer room over there, that particular 400. Okay, I think we are just about out of time. I'll tell you what, I will take final check-ins. Miss Brenda will hold you for next week on the brown dwarf story. I think that would be interesting, and it's still timely. So I'll take any final check-ins. Anyone would like to join us this evening, please come now with your call sign, your name, where you're transmitting from.
W5FC.
I'm completely operational and all my circuits are functioning perfectly.
Afterglow Movie Net.
Kilo Golf 5, Whiskey Victor Lima, James Carrollton.
Foxtrot 5, Tango Hotel Bravo, Michael in Henrietta. KF5, CFW, Arlington, Texas.
All right, the first I got 4 check-ins on that. I got K5 Kilo Charlie. That station, you were real light into the repeater. I'm going to turn this thing up to 11 so I can hear you. So go ahead and give me your call sign twice, your name, and where you're transmitting from. Okay, you were all noise on that one. I'll see if I can find you in my logs since we got another net coming up, and I'll check you in. I got KG5 Whiskey Victor Lima. That's James and Carrollton. KF5 THB Michael and Henrietta, and I got KF5 CFW over in Arlington. Thank you for checking in, everybody. Tonight we had 34 check-ins, not too bad. Participating on the air, and thanks to all who checked in this evening. Hope you'll join us here next week and every Saturday night at 9 p.m. to discuss astronomy, space, and space exploration. On this net, the sky is never the limit. We're always looking for net control stations for this and all the other DARC nets. If you'd like to try your hand at this, contact any of the net controls by sending an email to nets@whiskey5friedchicken.org, w5fc.org. You can follow topics and discussion about this net and astronomy in general on Facebook and Twitter, as well as our audio and video streams, video archives, and other useful internet resources by going to that website, w5fc.org, at the conclusion of this net. Till next Saturday night, this is Kilo Echo 5, India Charlie X-Ray, Tom, and I'll be closing the net at 22:32 local time, returning the repeater to normal amateur use. We will start up the Afterglow movie net here in about 5 minutes. Go powder your noses. 5 minutes, come back, and we'll be discussing Apollo 13. See you then.
KG5P.
Hey, Mike, go ahead.
Wonderful net tonight, Tom. Don't stop me now, KG5P.
Yeah, I thought that was great, too. It was pretty cool. All right, let me go take care of business. I'll be back in 5 minutes. I think Miss Brenda's going to take the net this evening. That she'll be back here in 5. See you then. This is KE5ICX. Thanks.
N5HYP. N5HYP testing.
Solid copy, Tom, KG5P.
Thanks, I'm doing crossband, so I wanted to check it. N5HYP clear.
for the Afterglow Movie Net. We do this every Saturday. Every Saturday night about 10:30 after Skynet. This is WB5OZL. My name's Brenda. And tonight our movie is going to be an all-time favorite, Apollo 13. So what we're going to do is take check-ins. And first I'm going to read a little synopsis that Tom has written. Give him credit. Jim Lovell looked at the stopped-up sink. His wife Marilyn stared at her husband. He'd been to the moon and back, and yet how come he couldn't clear a stopped-up drain? Lovell grabbed the buzzer and shouted into his sleeve, "Houston, I've begun transposition and docking," and rammed the rubber suction device into the kitchen sink. All to no avail. Standing water just stood there, unmoved by his heroic efforts. Marilyn spoke to her husband. "Honey, call a local plumber. He'll fix it." "Negative on that. I'm going 100% oxygen, so I cannot hear you. Over." With that, Lovell donned his A7L spacesuit helmet and turned the oxygen level to 11. This is the synopsis of Apollo 13. You may recognize it. All right. What we're going to do is check in people, your name, your call, your name, your QTH, and whether or not you have seen the movie. Now, you don't have to have seen the movie to be in the rotation if you want to talk about this thing or talk about Apollo 13 or anything anybody says. That's up to you. All right, we're going to start with low power and short time first. Please come now.
KE5AQB, Dallas,
November 5, Hotel Yankee Papa, Tom and Irving.
This is Kilo Foxtrot 5, Juliet Hotel Alpha, Chaz Mesquite. Yes, in fact, I saw the movie about 10 days ago before I knew this was going to be the movie.
Kilo 5, Alpha November Echo, Kane, and Richardson. And I actually saw this movie when it came out at Johnson Space Center in Houston, so at their IMAX theater. K5A in Richardson.
November Tango 5, Tango Mike, Tony in Dallas. I saw the movie, and I wonder if people have forgotten about the whole low power short time thing.
WT9V, Plano. Low power is relative.
Okay, the very first check-in, I couldn't read any of your call or name. Would you please come back with everything? Well, nothing heard. Maybe you could change your power setting and come back in a minute. Next we have N5HYP, Tom. I believe you did see the movie. KF5JHA, Chaz. K5ANE, Kane. NT5TM, Tony. And WT9V didn't give a name. I assume you're still Michael. Okay, do we have any more check-ins?
November 5, Bravo, Bravo. Not low power, or short time. Regular power, regular time. I did see the movie.
Kilo Echo 5, India Charlie X-Ray, Tom in Louisville. Yes, I saw the movie.
Kilo Golf 5, Papa. Billions of watts. Outrageously numbers of watts. I saw the movie years ago, but my only comment is turn SCE docks, KG5P.
Okay, we got N5BB Bill, KE5ICX Tom, and KG5P Mike. Do we have anybody on Echolink?
Golf 5, Bravo, Zulu, Whiskey, J near Weatherford. Yes, I've seen it.
This is Kilo Foxtrot 5, Papa Delta Sierra, Billy and Sherman. Yes, I've seen it. I saw it when it came out. Saw it today on my 2-disc anniversary edition, which has the IMAX Experience version as well as the theatrical release. It's KFI PDS.
Okay, we got KG5BZWJ and KF5PDS Billy. Any other regular check-ins?
Kilo Golf 5, Alpha Papa Lima, Patrick in Dallas, and yes, I've seen the movie.
Oh, Patrick, could you please come back with your call? I can't read my writing.
No problem. It's Kilo Golf 5, Alpha Papa Lima.
Okay, KG5ATL. Patrick, welcome to the net. All right, I had been reminded I should actually read a real synopsis of this movie. This is from Wikipedia. Apollo 13 is a 1995 American space docudrama film directed by Ron Howard and starring Tom Hanks, Kevin Bacon, Bill Paxton, Gary Sinise, and Ed Harris. Screenplay by William Broyles Jr. and Al Reinert dramatizes the aborted 1970 Apollo 13 lunar mission, and it is an adaptation of the 1994 book Lost Moon, The Perilous Voyage of Apollo 13 by astronaut Jim Lovell and Jeffrey Kluger. The film depicts astronauts Lovell, Jack Swikert, and Fred Hayes aboard Apollo 13 for America's third moon landing mission. En route, an onboard explosion deprives their spacecraft of most of its oxygen supply and electrical power, forcing NASA's flight controllers to abort the moon landing and turning the mission into a struggle to get the 3 men home safely. All right. What we normally do is we talk first. The first rotation, we talk about the plot, and then the second one, we talk about characters, and then about special effects, and then it just kind of gets to be a free-for-all at the end, anything you want to talk about. So, let's start with N5HYP. Tom, what did you think about the plot of this movie?
Hey everyone on the net, I'm back. Haven't been here for a while. This is N5HYP. Holly and Anna and Holly and I watched the movie this afternoon, but we've seen it before. I saw it in theaters back in the 90s. This is really one of Ron Howard's masterpieces. And, well, heck, such a great story. You can't mess with the plot too much. They did a little bit just to add a little drama, but they didn't add much. It's a tremendous movie. I mean, the story was just tremendous to begin with. And Ron Howard didn't screw it up. That was the good point. Other directors, I'm sure, would have. Ron didn't. And so that's what I got to say about that. We'll talk about characters later. N5HYP, back to net.
All right, KF5JAJ Chaz, plot.
Good evening, everyone. Well, the plot's based upon a real happening. So what can I say? They pretty much followed it. There are a few things that weren't quite right in the movie, but most of them, I'd say, 96%? Probably correct. Okay, so the plot, I do a thumbs up on. Really good plot. Lots of drama. Lots of different things that could have gone wrong. Did go wrong, but got fixed somehow. KF5JJ, back to you, Brenda. Thanks.
All right, K5ANE. Kane, go ahead.
Overall a great movie, but just humans going to the moon, I don't know. The plot just seemed rather unbelievable to me. Just kidding. Absolutely wonderful, fantastic movie. The plot, they had to take some generosities to continue to keep the drama up of just the flow of a movie, but even then, from what I understand, a lot of the basic ideas and things like that were pretty faithful. This even coming from some of the astronauts that were in the capsule. Excellent thing. I just wanted to point out, plot-wise, they kind of make a point to showcase that all the astronauts are driving Corvettes, and that was actually a real thing. The GM actually gave all of the Apollo astronauts Corvettes to be driving around, so I just wanted to throw that out there. This is K5ANE, back to net control.
Yeah, and their wives had to drive station wagons. Wasn't fair. NT5TM, Tony, go ahead.
Now, tonight, I am not the Grinch, but I want to go into some detail about just how awesome the plot was. Because great art comes from constraint. It's hard to write a sonnet, but a good sonnet is something that lasts for half a millennium. Dr. Seuss won a bet that he could write a good book using only 50 different words. And what we got was green eggs and ham. Constraint actually can make artists rise to their challenge. And this is a movie with a tremendous amount of constraints. I've been having a lot of fun today on a website called Apollo in Real Time. Every bit of dialogue that this movie contains and every plot point was foreordained. They can combine characters, they can simplify things for artistic effect, but they can't change much because there are websites where you can go, and if you want to hear what the flight surgeon was saying to the flight director's assistant 17 hours in, you just click on the button that says flight surgeon, and then you right-click on the flight director, and you can hear them talking. So the plot is predictable, but yet, here's the challenge. that we know, you have to be able to tell a good story. You have to bring out the human parts, the things that make us interested. And this movie did an outstanding job within these constraints of humanizing its plot. A wonderful, wonderful technical touch, because you need an A story and a B story. If you watch Starship Troopers, it's a movie about humans fighting off giant bugs from outer space. But then the secondary plot in the movie is all these young kids getting buzz cuts and growing up and learning what it is like to be an adult. In this movie, they subtly, within the framework of what they had to work with, have more than one B plot. For example, because they can't change what the astronauts do or what the astronauts say, they use cinematography to have a B plot about these three astronauts becoming a better and better crew. We have a pilot who was introduced at the last minute, and so we see these split shots where he's by himself and the other two astronauts are together. And then gradually they get more and more comfortable, including them in the same shot, and by the end of the movie, they can show all three of them working together with a single piece of camera work. This is a piece of plot done entirely with cinematography, and they do it well. Likewise, the traditional American movie theme in filmmaking, well, kind of redundant there, the traditional theme of any American movie is how a rugged individualist overcomes all the institutional prejudices to prove them all wrong and triumph in the end. This is not that movie. They show how people work together, because sometimes one person can't do it alone. If this were just Jim Lovell in a broken flying space car somewhere out above the Van Allen belts, he'd have died. So another of our secondary plots that they hide behind, all the official dialogue and plot points that we have to have is the ever-increasing teamwork, not just of the crew, but of all the staff at NASA. And a third, somewhat more complicated piece of plot that they show is the sacrifices of the people around the astronauts, their families. We get to see, a more experienced astronaut's wife, Marilyn Lovell, co-string another wife. Remember, you're proud, thrilled, and excited. You all know your lines, right? Their families were people with real problems who made real sacrifices and didn't experience any sort of magical benevolence from the government. They got garbage from NASA PR officials. They learned more just by listening to the audio. But they do a good job. They do their part. Everyone does their part. So within the constraint of the fact that we all know all the words and we all know what's going to happen, I mean, there's no way to make a spoiler for this movie because we all know how it ends. The filmmakers found subsidiary plot points that were compelling and interesting as the crew becomes one crew and NASA becomes one agency, and they still recognize the sacrifices that the astronauts' families had to make. So the plot is horribly constrained because we literally know every word the astronauts say before the movie starts, but they do a good job anyways, so I'm impressed. NT5TM.
Oh, man, you are so right. That is so spot on. All right, WT9V, Michael.
Gee, thanks, Tony. Don't leave anything for the rest of us to say. WT9V.
Okay. N5BB, Bill, go ahead.
Hi, Brenda. Hey, I agree with Tony, but Tony missed one thing. There were 4 astronauts. Mattingly was brought into this as a key member in the plot, and I think that was critical to the whole plot, really. Because the way the movie came across, Ken Mattingly was key to them getting back. So I thought that was cool. And they inserted a few pieces of dialogue talking about, I bet you wish you were here and other kind of things to kind of acknowledge some of that. But the plot was what happened. It's a biographical kind of film in 5BB. It was good.
All right, K5ICX, Tom. Go ahead.
Well, thank you, Brenda. As you can probably imagine, this is one of my favorite movies of all time. I really enjoy it. Knowing all the things that happen in the film, I agree with Tony as far as what do you do in order to expand upon the story to make it intriguing, make it interesting to others. And I'm going to kind of zip ahead because we usually talk about music later on, but I think that music is an integral part of telling the story, and that is something that James Horner did an exceptionally good job with this, because you feel the gravitas of the situation. When the astronauts start walking to the pad and they're in their spacesuits, which is like armor, going into battle, it is just so overwhelming and so cool, and seeing them go up on that 32-story rocket and into the spacecraft. There's a scene in there that I love, and it shows not Gunther Wendt, it could have been Gunther Wendt, but the astronauts sit in their seats, and you'll see somebody take their foot and press heavily on them down into the couches so they can pull the straps tight. The viewer's initial impression is that they're just trying to make fun of them or to make them seem as though this is our way of saying good luck, but in reality, you had to really buckle them in. Launching on a Saturn V is like a train wreck going into orbit. It moves around at 32 stories. This thing is taking off. There's 5 engines 32 stories down that are gimbaling and forcing the rocket into the air and to stay upright, which was no mean feat 6 years earlier. And now you've got this massive rocket. That was really important. One of the things that does come out, and you'll hear anybody flying on a Saturn 1B, the same astronauts that went with Skylab and to the Apollo Soyuz test project, is how smooth the Saturn 1B was, how easy it was. It slipped into orbit. Yeah, that was true. So when you see them going into orbit and this massive moving around and everything, it really is impressive. They capture it quite well, I think. The scenes, of course, when they're in orbit, or not in orbit, but on translunar trajectory and trans-Earth trajectory, the coldness of space in that's real, and trying to keep everybody warm, and they're getting sick while they're coming back. I mean, everything about this mission, and turning off everything inside the command module is a striking thing, because that never happened on any other mission, and nor has it happened at any time since. The thought that this could happen was just totally unbelievable, that all systems would be lost like that, and they would have to try and find a way of getting home. It is an incredible thing. It is an amazing thing, and being able to tell that story again, 25 years later, and now 50 years later, and it still gives you the same impression, I think is tremendous storytelling on the first level. So I'll stop there and quit emoting, but seeing this movie again yesterday, it brought it all back. It's an excellent film. KE5ICX.
All right, KG5P, Mike, go ahead.
Oh, goodness gracious. This is Mike, KG5P. Brenda, you and I are about the same vintage. I won't just I won't describe what that is, but you and I saw the real event. You know, and they made a movie out of it, and I love Ron Cox. He's a great director. But we saw the real thing, as many of you others did. And James Brolin is kind of a cheesecake actor. Yeah, they cast him in the part, but it wasn't the real thing. You know, so it's a good movie, but it's fictional. It's not what happened because we were there. We saw it. Now maybe the next generation, they'll watch this movie and they'll say it's perfectly fine, but I can't do that. Because I was there, and you were there. And I remember the event. And, you know, my hat's off to Ronnie Cox for making a movie out of it, but, you know, it hasn't stood the test of time. I don't think it will. History will stand the test of time. And as much as I love Ronnie Cox, he's a fantastic director. It was just too early. It was not the time. And I think the movie was okay, but it was entertainment. But this was not entertainment. This is history. And you and I lived through it. KG5P.
All right, KG5BZWJ, go ahead.
KG5BZW. Yeah, I'm kind of confused. Ron Howard directed this film, so well. Anyway, not gonna on that. Yeah, this is one of those movies that you just got. It's hard to really comment on the plot because with so many people said the skeleton is what happened in reality, and as many as people have observed here and elsewhere, yeah, that's what happened. But a lot of that's the skeleton. A lot of what this movie does means to it. I mean, yeah, maybe that's fiction, but it still tells some interesting stories and still kind of I don't know. I feel, granted, I wasn't there. I think it gets. I'd like to think that it gives a good impression of what it's like to be there. All the little side stories about the grandmother and the wives and all that. Yeah, there's just so many little details to it, and it's like I almost hate to talk about that, not really knowing so many of the details. There's so many people here that already can break it down into the aspects that are right and good, and the other stuff. I love kind of going think about those details, and I'm kind of motivated, not entirely, to research some of those details further. I want to watch it again and again a few times. At least I say that. I only rented this film, so I don't know. I may not buy. I don't know. I may buy it and watch it again for some, just to see some of the details. Just to compare it with reality and all just to inspire motivation. I'm not sure, but I don't know. It's probably I don't know, third or fourth time I've seen it, and man, it's just, I just love watching the little details they just add and for you to look at, and how they contribute to the overall story. That's all I can say. Yeah, really all I can say at this moment. So I'll leave it at that. 55 BDW.
All right, KF5 PDS, Billy.
There's really not bad. Everybody's had great comments, and Tony's description of the plot was just so on point. I have nothing to add to that. I'll just add that I've always loved this film, and that's why I bought I found the double DVD at Half Price Books and bought it immediately. Yeah, I'll never tire of this film because it is just a monumental piece of history that should never be forgotten. And yes, they did take artistic license with some events and characterizations, but it was mainly to help get across the technical aspects to the general public. So it was not meant, to be, deliberately inaccurate. It was meant to take highly technical things and carry them across to a public that does not necessarily, know the ins and outs of the space program. So, and I think they did that in a very positive way, in a very judicious way. And in watching the special features, they bore that out. And Ron Howard has always done wonderfully moving films, and continues to have his finger on the pulse of what's important and what's moving and what's engaging with film. So I will always love this film, and I'll have more comments with regards to characterization and other aspects. So I'll have some more to add later, but really enjoyed everyone's comments, and again, I will never tire of this film. I will always pull it out again and again and watch it. So this is KF5 PDS, back to Matt.
All right, KG5 APL, Patrick.
Hey all, this is KG5 APL. Yeah, like many of y'all have already said, this is an amazing movie. For me, it's got to be one of the top 5, maybe even top 3 movies on the list of great movies that I enjoy. As far as the plot, it was amazing. I think I appreciate the commentary about the movie versus those who have experienced and lived through it, because that's always a long question that I've always had is folks that have gone through it, tell us about your experience, because this movie, while it's great, doesn't do it justice. I would even add that for me personally, this movie led me to look into the event more, and it just became more and more an amazing event as well after I looked into the real history of the event. I would even say this movie also, I wouldn't say inspired me, but was definitely fuel for the person I would become later on in life, which is both getting degrees in engineering and getting degrees in history. Two great things. So I really appreciate partially this movie, but also more importantly the real historical event. To learn about it, both those things. And I think great things just about this movie, it highlights 4 great things, like let's go do something great, let's plan for it, let's work together, and then let's work the problems as they come. And I think this movie does a great job of all that. Thank you, back to net, KG5 APL.
Okay, well, it's my turn. This is WB5OZL. The plot is pretty much set in stone. You can't change the scientific facts or the historical facts. But what I love about this movie is the way it makes me feel. It just draws you in, your emotions. You care desperately about what happens. You really care about these people. And you just get drawn into it. You cry, you cheer. You're so happy when they live. And, we watch a lot of movies where I often make the flip comment, I hope they all die before the end. But this one, you desperately want everything to work out, and it would be so easy not to achieve that. Ron Howard is a master, and he does. He's just brilliant. And it's one of the reasons why this is such an enduringly favorite movie. I've never met anybody that didn't like it or had a serious criticism. And so it's, 25 years later, it holds up. I've seen it so many times, and I could watch it again tomorrow. All right, do we have any more check-ins? All right, back to the top. N5HYP. What do you think of the characterization?
Hey everybody again, this is N5HYP. I thought the characters, again, it was kind of interesting. It's a piece of history that everybody knows. I gotta tell you that Ed Harris really captured Gene Kranz. It's amazing to me how, first of all, how much he looks like Gene Kranz, but second of all, how much you saw Gene Kranz, and everybody who's old enough to have followed NASA in the 60s and 70s and early 80s knows Gene Kranz, and Ed Harris did a great job with that. It's just quite amazing in that regard. I also think Kathleen, I guess Quinlan, who played Marilyn Lovell, I thought she did a great job of expressing kind of the emotion and that she would have felt, from losing the wedding ring down the shower the morning of the launch to her reaction while listening to the Capcom audio on the little NASA speaker thing that they had in the house, and such like that. I thought it felt real well. On average, again, I guess the characterizations reflected the reality and showed you what the people were feeling. It was done well. Again, I just love it. I think it is one of the shining moment in Ron Howard's directorial and producing career. I mean, he's done some other good stuff, but really, this was just great. Is N5HYP back to net?
Yeah, this thing got 9 Oscar nominations and only won 2. That's just a real injustice. All right, KF5JHA, Chaz, go ahead.
Well, hello again. We're supposed to talk about characterizations, I guess, now. I just want to concentrate on one character. That would be Fred Hayes. That was Bill Paxton that was the actor. But the reason why I want to concentrate on that is because the way I really saw Apollo 13 way back in 2002. Back in 2001, I'd been accepted to go through a training program at the Johnson Space Center. It was a 2-week-long program. Unfortunately, that was supposed to happen about 2 weeks after 9/11. Well, that got postponed. Got postponed until February. We didn't get to do all the stuff we were supposed to do originally because things had been locked down and there were security measures in place. So they had to do some different things than had been scheduled. And one of the things they did that was really great was when we took a tour of the building that Mission Control is in. Now, you have to understand, Mission Control, it is different for different periods of time the original one, and then there was one during the Apollo mission, and there was another one. Well, there's a different one now, so I know of at least 3 of them. I've been in 3 of them. The one that was going on, the mission control room that was going on during the Apollo era, I actually got to sit in and have dinner in, and at the same time, one of the Apollo 13 astronauts were there with us, Fred Hayes. And what did we get to watch on the big screen in mission control was Apollo 13. We all get to sit down one-on-one with Fred Hayes. He was at the Capcom location in mission control. We get to sit down with him about 10 minutes or so and talk to him. So that's what I wanted to talk about. He doesn't look anything like Bill Paxton. Fred Hayes doesn't. He really doesn't. And one of the things that happened when they loaded up stuff from the LIM and put it in the capsule, one of the things that they did is those pieces of material and things that came out of the LIM were eventually put in different frames, and the Apollo astronauts presented them to everyone that was in mission control that helped bring them back alive. I think they divided it up into several hundred pieces, and they gave a piece of it to all sorts of different people. So a couple of little facts there. I hope that was not really characterization I was talking about, but I was talking about one particular character, Fred Hayes. KF5, JHA, back to net control.
Yeah, I was thinking Bill Paxton doesn't look anything like him, but he's very distinctive looking. So I just think it'd be really hard to find an actor that looks a lot like him. He came to the museum one time, got to meet him. Very, very nice person. Just as nice as you think he might be. K5ANE, Kane, go ahead, characterization.
I find it rather interesting that in this movie, one of the biggest places where they have kind of inaccuracies is actually in the characterization, and yet it's also one of the biggest strengths in the movie. All of the actors did an enormously wonderful job portraying emotions and things like that, but oftentimes, from what I understand from what the actual astronauts have said later, a lot of these highly emotional kind of, arguments and, stress situations that you see really being played out on the spacecraft are extremely dramatized. All the astronauts were being ultra professional, which makes sense in a big way. That it's they're trying to portray these stresses that the astronauts were really feeling inside, and bring that across to the movie. And overall, both the writing team and the actors all did an incredible job on that. And I really do like that they did bring in the families. They focused on Jim's family the most, but they brought in the other families as well and really tried to bring and build up the emotional stress of the families on the ground, as well as the people in space, as well as the people at mission control. Just this whole stressful situation and coming together as a team to solve this challenge. And yeah, they did an amazing job. This is K5ANE.
Okay, NT5TM, Tony.
Thank you, Brenda. I think K5A&E kind of nailed it, because I've never met Jim Lovell, but I've heard him speak in public. He was the head of the National Eagle Scout Association for many years, and I was a member of that group. And I actually found him to be an astonishingly boring public speaker. He's the kind of person that if you run him over with a truck, he would have said, "Excuse me, I've been run over with a truck." And then he would have died, and he wouldn't have said anything else. Just reported just the facts, because of course that's what they were all trained to do, and they practice it. So the movie did have to take a great liberty with the way astronauts actually behave, and I think that they did a really good job with that. I think also N5BB was right in the earlier round that, yeah, there were really 4 astronauts, and of course the inclusion of John Aaron there and other characters in Mission Control. To tell a good story, because we're all a little narcissistic, we don't want to hear about rocks or planets or radiation fields. We want to hear about people, because we're people, and we like what happens to people. They did a great job of yet toning down the astronaut stoicism. So thank you, K5A and N5BB. I think you got it. NT5TM.
All right, WT9V, characterization. Yes.
Well, I thought the characterization was good. Ish. With, basically what Kane said. I mean, I kind of was mildly annoyed at some of the emotional bits, both on the ground and in the spacecraft, because it seemed gratuitous to me. Maybe I was just looking more for what happened, how it happened, more of a documentary as opposed to trying to throw extra drama into it. I mean, there is enough drama already in this story. It doesn't need extra Hollywood drama to make it gripping, to make it an amazing story. And I think that actually detracted from the story more than it added to it. But what do I know? I'm not a, famous movie producer. WT9V.
All right, N5BB, Bill.
Thank you, Brenda. This is N5BB. Characterization. Well, I want to add one more character that was just archive footage they used, but it was Walter Cronkite. Now, I know that you young whippersnappers you may have heard of Walter Cronkite, but you may not have realized that Walter Cronkite was really tied in with the space program. He was in the news media, CBS News, but he really popularized all the NASA missions. So showing him right up front there in the movie, I think was really great, because it gives you an idea of what the population, how they saw it. What they saw was Walter Cronkite and his emotions and everything like that. So I think that was great. I liked all of the performances, and it's possible that the emotion inside the spacecraft wasn't as serious as was shown, but will we really know? I really wonder if those 3 astronauts will, totally reveal what happened there in that capsule, their emotional interactions with each other. It's hard to say. So I don't think in the movie, I don't think it was done in an overboard manner. I thought that Bill Paxton did a good job at playing a Fred Hayes that got very, very sick, but he did everything he could to be a useful crew member, even though he was really sick. I thought Kevin Bacon did a good job as Jack Swigert, kind of he was, as they pointed out, the bachelor in the group, and came in and really was merged well with that crew. I mean, it wasn't clear he was going to be able to from what Jim Lovell's attitude, you know, at the start, but they got along just fine. I thought Tom Hanks did a good job. As well as Ed Harris and Kathleen Quinlan and Gary Sinise. I liked all of them. I liked all those performances. And it's kind of hard for me to pick out, you know, which one I like better than another. I also liked the woman that played his mother, Lovell's mother. I'm trying to find her name here. But here, Blanche Lovell. I think she did a good job. And I thought it was kind of funny. They threw a little joke in there when they had Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin visit her. And she looks up and says, you know, somebody introduced them by their names and their full names. And she looks up and then says, "You guys have something to do with NASA?" I thought that was a little funny thing they threw in there. I don't know if that was real or not, realistic, but it was very funny. Love the movie, Anti-BB.
All right, K5ICX, characterization.
Thank you, Ms. Brenda. I think, well, you got to realize, you know, we've been talking about Bill Paxton, Kevin Bacon, and Tom Hanks, and Ed Harris playing the respective characters. They were the actual, you know, look and feel of the movie, and they got the big money to do that. The characterization really is behind, I think, the mission control people that are there. While you don't know their names, I mean, you know them as flight ecom, surgeon, and all that stuff. Those characters, even though they only appear for a short time, are really the cement for this movie, because you see them always working the problems. And back then, too, and you'll see that they're relatively young, which was true. I mean, most of these guys were in their 20s and 30s. They were old if they were in their 30s. They were doing something that nobody had ever done before. They were writing procedures that never happened before. They were doing all this stuff, and all of a sudden now they're thrust into this situation. They've got to figure it out, and there's no time to lose. It was mentioned in the first round about the fact that, you know, teams working together, people working together in order to solve a problem was an important part of it. I think that really makes all the difference in the world in the storyline here. Because the astronauts really, when you get down to it, they don't have any control over this thing. The characters are sitting there bouncing off the walls with one another, certainly. They're professionals, although they did take dramatic license there for a little bit. Everything that they do is dependent on mission control doing their job. And really the story in this movie revolves around those characters, the personal characters of family members and all that, which you mentioned earlier. But in reality, our three astronauts have no control over anything. They are talking to one another. The exposition is there. But this would not be something that would work in a movie. You know, you could watch Capricorn 1, or you could watch, what was it? I'll think of it. Hold on. Oh, Marooned. And those movies come off as not genuine, because the astronauts have control over everything that's going on, although they say they don't throughout the film. They, you know, you'll have Gene Hackman, and he throws himself outside the space capsule. It's very unconvincing. In reality, the thing that really happens here is, because this is a true story, and it works out, the drama actually appears elsewhere when it's all said and done. So I think that's what makes the film really tick, is all the other stuff, all the other actors that are in this film, even if they're there just for a second or two, they are the ones that make this film work. KE5ICX.
Okay, KG5P, Mike.
It's KG5P. Oh, thank you, Brenda. A lot of stuff to think about. I haven't seen this movie in years. But I remember Walter Cronkite. And, you know, when I was a kid, I'm talking about maybe 12 years old, I used to get up and watch Walter Cronkite announce the space launches, you know, the original Mercury. And he was there. You know, I'm not an early riser, but they would have all these at 5 o'clock in the morning or something like that, you know. But yeah, I'm not an early riser in no sense of the word, but I would get up and watch Walter Cronkite and the space launches, Alan Shepard, and all that stuff. Loved it. It's probably the only time I ever get up in the morning unless somebody threw me out of the rack. Now, Bill Paxton is another great actor that I really loved. But I can't say the same about James Brolin. James Brolin, he's probably a good actor, you know, but he got typecast. You know, for instance, you know, Sean Connery, after he made a few movies, he decided to drop the James Bond role because he was becoming typecast. And he's a great actor, and he still is. He's made a lot of great movies, but not as James Bond. And the problem was, I don't really have a good listing, a good list here. And James Brolin was probably a good actor, but he just got typecast, in my opinion. And he just was not credible in his role. That's just me. Okay, I'm probably wrong, and you would agree otherwise. But that's just, I never really cared for James Brolin. I never really did because he was typecast. Now, we talk about Gene Kranz. And I'm working on this right now, and this will be on the Skynet. But I'm like 2 degrees of separation from Gene Kranz. Because I know his daughter and her daughter's father was the right-hand man, a guy named, his name was Spencer Gardner. And I'm going to work on this to get him on Skynet. The right-hand man of Gene Kranz. So, back to that KG5P.
Okay, I do want to point out that James Brolin was not in this movie. I'm not sure who you're confusing him with, but Tom Hanks played Jim Lovell. All right, KG5BZWJ.
Okay, well, so I know don't want to get too much into like philosophy of well how true is a story if it if it can only have certain things, and there's a philosophy of what is true and all of that which you get into when it comes to true stories, because all true stories are summaries, and how true is a summary? Is it really a summary? I don't know. I oversimplified by calling them summaries because there's the emotional aspect which you can't really convey with a summary. And blah blah blah. Yeah, I'm getting way off tangent, off topic. It relates a lot to the characterization, and so we've got the Gene Kranz character. I wish I knew what I had read years ago about how they kind of simplified the interrelationships between people in mission control. How Gene Kranz. I mean, Gene Kranz is now taking the hierarchy or whatever. And I'm going to use the term hierarchy loosely because I'm not entirely sure if it's how much of a matrix or hierarchy it really is. I do know there are certain things that will, I recall reading that there are some things that they had to simplify in terms of just who reports to who, how the truth, what fact is being conveyed. Fact is true, but who is being reported to truth is not necessarily. And admittedly, this is maybe more plot related than character related. It relates because how each person reacts and does the thing is kind of related to the character. And oh god, I'm digging myself a hole here. I do want to admit that that may not be quite factual. I do think they did a pretty good job with the time constraints and all of the other constraints they had. I thought they did a wonderful job. I'm going to say that. But it's one of these things about I do a point that yes, it might be a true story and it might be very true, but still, hold on, I got about time out. It's still a movie, and a movie is not replacement for reading about actual history and all of that. So, I feel like I'm missing my actual point of the characterization that I tried to hit, and just not quite doing it. But I just kind of felt like something like that needs to be admitted, which I'm sure has already been admitted. No, I'm messing up. I think whatever point I've made has been made, and I'm just making it worse as I go along. So I'll just have to hand it over to the next person. Thank you about these areas.
Okay, KF5 PDS Billy.
Great. Well, thanks, Brenda. I love all the chemistry between all the characters. They capture everything, from what's going on inside the capsule with the astronauts to the interactions with the mission control and then mission control characters, the interaction with each other, and then even just the playful family interactions between Jim and his wife and his son and the kids, and you get to see the home life as well as the professional life. And so I just love all the balance of the characters that we get to see inside and outside the space program, and I just love the characterizations. And I think it is uncanny that Ed Harris really did resemble Gene Kranz. You always think it's great when they can get actors to physically resemble them, but they also get them for their dynamics, range of their acting and things. And even though Tom Hanks does not look like Jim Lovell, he really portrays him well. Tom Hanks, to me, just has this uncanny ability to get inside of a character's mind and emotions, and he just is such a wonderful lens to send things out that, you know, you forget that he is, you know, that it's Tom Hanks delivering, you know, it gets you inside the character. So I always enjoy his portrayals of characters, whether he looks like the actual person or not. The only thing I take issue with in this movie is the portrayal of Swigert. I like Kevin Bacon, but I just don't like that they made him out to be like kind of a greenhorn rookie. Like if he couldn't do his job, then the mission wasn't going to happen. Because if you watch the special features, Jim Lovell, you know, addresses that and says that Swigert was an excellent pilot, and that if he wasn't able to do the job, then there were two other guys in the capsule that could have done it. So it wasn't as big of a deal breaker as they make in the movie. So I don't really like that they kind of made him out to be some kind of rookie when he was not. And also, kind of, you know, during the dramatic scene when they're all kind of yelling at each other in the capsule, which, as Bill pointed out, we don't know exactly what happened there. But so they can take license with that, but I doubt any of them referred to the capsule as a POS. You know, even if they were mad, I don't think, to me, that was a little bit too gratuitous just to, you know, ramp up the emotions. And I bet if they did, that would really have surprised me if they would have referred to any part of their capsule as that way. So that I kind of was like, not too sure about that. But other than that, you know, I love, as Brenda pointed out earlier, you highly invest in the characters because, you know, they are portraying real people and real events, and you know that this event really took place, and this was a highly, you know, emotional crisis that took place that everybody, as they say in the movie, everybody in the world got caught up with it. There are certain things in historical events where people do just kind of, everybody stops and holds their breath while something happens, or we all are affected in some profound way. And this is one of those moments that where everyone in the world just became caught up in it. And the movie really brings that through. I also love the seamless adaptation and adding in of the real footage from Walter Cronkite and Jules Bergman, which really helps make the time. It places you in that time. And, you know, Walter was always a fixture in our house for the news. That was all my grandmother wanted to watch was Walter Cronkite because he delivered it straight. And when he got emotional, everybody got emotional. So, but he was just such a wonderful, trusted member of the family. So everybody wanted to watch Walter. So I think that's a great way to really take you back in time. So with that, I really can't think of anything else to add. So I'll return it to you. This is KF5's PDS back to net.
All right. KG5APL, Patrick.
Hey, this is KG5APL. Yeah, I think a lot of it's been said already, but yeah, in a movie where you have one of the best actors of that era, Tom Hanks, I have to agree though with a lot of what has been said before, but with N5H5P that Ed Harris really brought a whole lot to that movie. And really advanced it to the level of, I guess, high esteem that we hold this movie in. But I think another great thing about this movie is that it made all the minor characters seem very important, except for maybe the flight surgeon. And I'm also grateful that, or I would have to agree with a lot of what N5BB was saying with the mom, Jim Lovell's mom. I think she actually had one of the best lines in the movie, and I'd be interested to hear what you all think some of the best lines are. But when she goes and is talking to the Jim Lovell's wife and kids, basically saying, well, don't you worry, honey. If they can get a washing machine to fly, my Jimmy can land it. I think stuff like that was great. And just that goes through all the other characters as well. Yeah, and that's about it. Back to Net Control, KG5APL.
Okay, we don't know what was said up there, but these are all military people, and I think generally they had very disciplined behaviors. They had a job to do, and think about the airline captain knowing he's going to crash. No inflection. He may as well just be reading a menu. It's just they are trained not to get emotional. So we'll never know. It makes for good theater, but I wouldn't imagine there was ever a great deal of drama in the spacecraft. I do know, however, in Apollo 7, Walt Cunningham and Wally Schirra, they just hated each other. And for the rest of their lives, well, Schirra's dead, well known, just absolutely detested each other. And that was present there in the Apollo 7 flight, but they did their job. And the flight controllers, mission controllers, and I don't want to say unsung heroes, because everybody knows what a job they did. Long, long hours. Brilliant people. I mean, they stepped up and just did amazing things. But they were also human. I'll have to tell a side story. I met a guy who was a mission controller during the Apollo missions. And he talked about the long hours, and he admitted that one night, about 10:30, he looked at Gene Kranz and he thought, I wish he'd just die so we could go home and go to bed. And, that's a horrible admission, but these people were driven to, almost to the end of their limits. But they did. They kept, they stayed at their posts and they did it. And it's to their credit, I'd say. All right. Any other check-ins? This is Study B50ZL. Okay, now we're going to talk about special effects. N5HYP, Tom.
Hey, Brenda, N5HYP here again. This film was done 25 years ago, 1995. Computer animation was becoming more mainstream at the time. Ron Howard did a really good job with using computer animation, and I'm assuming a lot of that to do the spacecraft movements, which I thought were a little bit overblown as far as how much, like when after the explosion, how much the gyrations of the spacecraft were. They might have been overblown for dramatic sake, but still, yes, the spacecrafts had significant navigational issues that had to be dealt with. What was very amazing to me was the fact that they spent a lot of time in the zero-G simulator aircraft, doing just all sorts of cycles. You get, when they do those zero-G arcs, you get like about 30 or 45 seconds of weightlessness during the arc, and so they filmed a lot of scenes in that mode, to make it really look and feel like it was like the astronauts were in space. So that was really very amazing. Plus also, again, you know, the look of detail. They did a lot of things to make you really feel and know that you were on an Apollo mission. The look of the navigation computer was the navigation computer that the astronauts had to work with. So Ron Howard did a great job with that. Again, here's the deal. Everybody knew the story. Everybody has seen the documentary footage. Everybody's seen the television, you know, the film footage and the television excerpts from Apollo missions, so they know what it looks like. Ron did a great job of making it look real. So, again, it's one of my favorite movies, and Ron, you know, probably the best thing Ron Howard ever did. 73 to all. Take care. God bless from N5H5P.
Okay, KF5JH8 Chaz, you still with us? I heard a rumor that he had signed off. K5ANE, Kane, go ahead.
As my final note, I'd like to throw out that one of the websites that I follow, like kind of a news blog kind of site, Ars Technica, arstechnica.com, recently had an article where they talked about the actual technical failure of the supercritical oxygen tank and the overall internals of how the tank worked and exactly what went wrong, technically speaking, on the spacecraft. They just posted a new article today on that, and I thought it was really interesting, and I'd highly recommend. Once again, the website is arstechnica.com, so check that out. Pretty cool resource and interesting story to actually see what happened. That'll be it for me. This is K5ANE, back to net control.
Okay, NT5PM, Tony.
Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Kane. I'm a regular reader of Ars Technica, but I missed that story. I will go look for it. And Tom, N5H5P, I'd like to echo your praise with that Vomit Comet work. There are astronauts who got to the moon and back, or who spent months on the ISS without getting space sick, but there's something about the zero-G alternating with the super high G forces in that plane that just makes people throw up. So to see, you know, the actors pretending to be cheerful or sorrowful or serious or whatever it is they had to do, knowing that in 22 seconds they're going to be puking. I think the effects in this movie aren't just effective, they show a devotion to art that is very impressive, because I couldn't do that. I'm not an actor. I couldn't conceal the fact that I know I'm going to be sick in a minute, but they did. And they might say they didn't, but oh, come on, that feels terrible. So I was so impressed with their willingness to do that, because it looks infinitely better than blue screen or harness work. Just seeing them floating and bouncing around the set is just, it was exactly right. And I know it's not technically an effect, but overall, I want to pass on a comment from Aaron kind of praising the collective effect of the movie. If I were to start telling Aaron about the number of amps our kitchen appliances use, she would wander into another room and start reading a book. This movie was so convincing that it made us care about things like people doing math on scratch paper, about how many amps were used by common household appliances, about people moving back and forth and adding and subtracting, or even how often they could go to the bathroom. So just the sum of the parts was really outstanding, that it makes you care about things that ordinarily would just not be on your radar. Billy, I liked your comment there, quoting Lovell, defending, the competence of Mr. Swigert, and really just wanted to echo that appreciation that Tom brought about the actor's willingness to do that real zero-G work, because it added so much to the movie and helped bring it all together. NT5TM, I'll just be listening for the rest of the night. Thank you.
All right. Next, WT9V, Michael.
Well, to pick up on the vomit comet bits, according to the IMDb, they flew 612 parabolic arcs in the vomit comet. So that sounds like a lot of fun. I thought most of the special effects were well done. The weightlessness part was good, convincing, even though it was, only a little bit of time, 20 seconds of weightlessness at a time. What I did have a problem with were some of the CGI graphics, like when they did the burn at the very end, and they lit the engine and the spacecraft goes like, no, that's not at all right. That's not even how they do it. But other than that, I thought the effects were good and believable. They didn't get in the way of the story, which is pretty much the best thing you can ask for special effects. WT9V.
All right, next, N5BB, Bill.
Let's see. I guess we're supposed to be talking about special effects, but it's so late, I think we're kind of closing up. I thought the special effects were great. Thought it was very realistic. I'm not sure about the bucking of the spacecraft. They depicted it as it might appear from the outside to be bucking around a lot. To me, that also looked like it was overdone, but I'm not sure. I don't really know what it would look like out there. I have no reference. I've never seen anything tumbling around in space like that without gassing and other things. So maybe it would look like that. I think it'd be interesting to know. Let's see. One other comment I'll make that's unrelated to the special effects is I've got an old friend. I haven't actually seen him in a long time, but I knew him years ago. Ken Goodwin, K5RG is his current call. He's actually climbed a bunch of the mountains in the Himalayas. He worked for the Draper Labs, MIT Draper Labs, at Johnson Spacecraft Center for 36 years, and he retired as a site manager. He was part of the team, the software team, that had to rewrite the code, which they didn't really show too much details in there, but they had to reprogram the computer so that, and it was very cold, so it's kind of hard for them to push the buttons, but they had to reprogram the computer with a different, some different instructions for the timing of some of the burns, where they did use the computer. And they had to, anyway, he was part of the team that did that. And I visited his house once, and there was a plaque on the wall that was signed by Richard Nixon that was to the team members, thanking them for bringing back Apollo 13. And so he described them working 24 hours a day there, trying to make sure they had all the calculations correct for reprogramming the computer. That's all I got. Good night. N5BB. Good movie.
Okay, KE5ICX, Tom.
W5FC.
All right, thank you, Miss Brenda. Yeah, it's getting late, but several things that I thought about the special effects were quite good, particularly from the technical aspects. There was some discussion where they had to use the Terminator for Earth to figure out the guidance platform. In the real flight, there was a real problem with junk all around the spacecraft. It was everywhere, and as such, they couldn't use star alignments with a sextant. Yeah, old school stuff. It was completely, just totally obliterated by all the debris that came off the service module. So they used Terminator of the Earth as a way of setting up the guidance, because everything else was just totally gone. Talk about light pollution, that was it. Now, while that was great, and it was accurate as to what really happened, the not-so-great part was the fact that they fired the main engine to make mid-course correction maneuvers. In fact, I was trying to double-check this, but let's see here. How often did they use the descent engine? That's where I was trying to figure out. I remember very distinctly as a kid they were talking about this, and they used 4 of the RCS, the reaction control system engines, which also tapped into the same main propellant on the lunar module in order to make these corrections. In the movie, it shows the thing going all over the place, and I don't remember that. I should have probably done my homework ahead of time on this, but I do not think they used that main engine. I think they used the RCSs, which gave them more control over the spacecraft. Let's see, what else? The things they got really right. I've actually seen I've seen the actual Apollo 13 command module, but I've also seen the one they used in Apollo 13, the movie, 2 different places. One at Cosmosphere up in Hutchinson, Kansas, where they had put it on display for one of their rotating displays about 3 years ago, I think it was, and then also down at Kennedy Space Center shortly after the movie when I was down there. They had the same items on display, so I got a chance to see the inside. And of course, when you watch the movie, it's very accurate. It is extremely accurate. It looks fantastic. Sometimes the props and the set pieces have to be convincing, and believe me, I've seen plenty of movies, particularly with a command module in it, an Apollo command module, where it did not look right. I've seen others where it looks exceptionally good, and those are usually simulators that were borrowed or used by the actors. You go, wow, that's really amazing. A case in point is Earth 2. I think it was Earth 2. With Gary Lockwood, and that one was great. It was a Block 1 command module on the inside, but it was obviously a NASA-derived thing. Let's see. Bill mentioned the bucking around as far as the command module as it's going into orbit. Oh man, from what I've heard, that was really quite extreme. So I touched on it in the first round, but you're never going to. The Gemini Titan 2 was an example where it would buck around. But when you've got something with that kind of heft and weight, and it's all being controlled from the base to the top of the spacecraft, the gimbaling that you get from that means that capsule's being bandied about with a pretty discernible pressure. And astronauts have always said it's like a train wreck going into space. So I think they underdid it in the movie, to be honest with you. And then finally, the staging as the Saturn V is going into orbit was kind of a disappointment to me. I've seen the Apollo 4 and Apollo 6 footage, which looks way more convincing. So this is the only downside I've got with it. I don't think they gave the heft, weight, and look of the Saturn V when it was actually doing the staging part. Now, the liftoff, fine. There were some problems as far as the tower and the 5 access cranes pulling away access towers. That part was not convincing. It looked great, but they don't do them all separately. They all pull apart at the same time because the rocket is now about to take off. So that problem, and then getting back to the staging, the second stage is separated from the S4B, and it just stops in space. No, it doesn't stop in space. That doesn't happen. So that was a bit weird. But everything else I loved. I absolutely adored it. I did notice one thing that was really kind of strange, and this is a minutia thing, and I'm not sure why it is. I'll have to go back and look. That's another one I got to confirm. But there's a picture where the jettison controls are, and there are covers over the top that you would have so you don't accidentally do anything. And you'll see that it is Paxton goes ahead and he covers over that thing that says no, so he doesn't accidentally launch the lunar module into space with the crew still on board. And it's got a barber pole effect to it, which is really cool. I like that. That is correct, and that's the way it should be. During the liftoff, though, they show the RCS system, not RCS, the launch escape system, the LES system, which also has the same barber pole, but it's gray. So I'm going to double check that. I don't think that's right. And the Apollo 7 command module, which is a Block 2, that went into orbit. I know I'm getting nerdish. Stay with me here. Those barber pole controls or covers are painted gray because they weren't used on that mission. But that spacecraft was designed for the lunar missions. They had gotten away from the Block 1s and went to the Block 2s. So they painted them gray because they had no importance on the mission at all. Okay, that's enough. I've just talked way too long. Back next control. This is KE5I6.
Okay, KG5P, Mike.
Goodness gracious, Brenda. KG5P. No, listen to Tom. Tom is right. He's absolutely right. But I'm not a believer in Hollywood. Hollywood, they do what they got to do, and that's cool. But I'm not sure if that's the reality of what happened. Now, I'll accept what Tom says, because he's researched this stuff and he knows this stuff far better than I do. Okay, but I think that this movie, and I haven't watched it in 25 years, so I'm going to stick my neck out, and I'll be totally wrong about this. This is like Hollywood poobah. Tom says it's very accurate. He may very well be right. In fact, he probably is right. But the books that I read, and for instance, Tom Wolfe's book, The Right Stuff, is as thick as a Dallas phone book. If you want to see what really happened, read that book. Another book is Michael Collins' book, Carrying the Fire. Now he talking about Apollo 9. Apollo 9, that's right. That was when they didn't land on the moon, but they went around the moon. And I remember that because I'm a late, I stay up late at night and watch it on TV. My parents are in bed. I was home for my freshman year in college, and I watched that. Great stuff. And to me, that's history. What they did, what Ronnie Cox did, and Opie and Andy, all that stuff, okay, that's all Hollywood shit. But and Tom's probably right. He's very, very close, and I haven't seen the movie in 25 years, and he's probably right. But you have to go to the history. You go back to the future. I remember personally Apollo 13. I was there. I saw the Walter Cronkite. I didn't watch it in some Ronnie Cox movie, which, he's a good director, but he's a fantasy director. That's his job. That's what he does. He writes fantasy. And I was there. I remember the situation. And some of it's true and some of it's nonsense. And you have to separate the truth from the nonsense. Because you saw it on TV doesn't necessarily make it so. Because you read on the internet, it doesn't necessarily make it so. Back to that, KG5P.
Okay, KG5BZWJ.
BZW. Almost tried to use my radio line, but yeah, that's nice. Okay, so it's a movie, so you gotta take it with a grain of salt to begin with, because it's a movie, it's a pictorial, representation over a couple of hours before some of that occurs over a number of days, and my God, it's pretty snippet. So anyway, okay. But that. What I like about the movie, of course, again, I did not love it. I was born in '78, and so the actual, real details of the film, the film depicts, I should say, I just did not experience. But what I like about the film is that, for at least my imagination of 1970 and FM and whatnot, I thought they did a pretty good job keeping it to it looked like if we were talking about 1970, we weren't talking about something else. The cars were the cars are super nice. That's clearly well taken care of. I guess they use replicas or not replica, but refurbished whatnot. Plays. I wonder about some of this place. Just some of I have to admit, some of the displays are awfully high resolution for 1970. So I kind of have a feeling that a few of those were, I want to know that's the thing about this movie. It's like, I want to know the details. It's such a launch point to learning all these details. It's not about, Apollo 13. Certainly somebody who I was, watching the movie, I think, if they, believe it in the story, they would be more motivated to learn at least something about NASA or, a number of other things. I'm out. And I know that's more. This is more. Not even plot. I guess I'm still on track. It's just not. But what I wanted to say is that I was not really. They had plenty of opportunities to take it out of the story, and there weren't too many issues. I thought the worst of the CGI was probably. Honestly, I thought it was the launch. Yeah, the gyrations, like BB is saying. I don't know. I'm really not quite sure. I think I've heard some sort of things like, yeah, that's probably a little much. But then maybe not. I don't know. There's I'm motivated to learn. There's whether the goal is the truth, whether the goal is something else, I think it accomplishes. I know I'm taking too long, so I'll yeah. I thought the special effects on average are pretty good. With not just the CGI ever all 1970. That's all that. He Ron did a good job. 85 BGW.
Okay, KF5 PDS. Billy.
I don't know if I have too much more different things to add about special effects than what's already been said. Yeah, I think a few rides on the Vomit Comet would have been fun, but I don't know, about 612 of them. And I agree with Tony's comment about, the actors, they're only up there for like 22 seconds, and then they have to come back down and before they start another parabolic arc, and they have to do their scene, and with all that in mind, they do a remarkable job. And I was also reading up that they also sat on some kind of seesaw-like device to make them look like they're floating for some scenes where they didn't do the full zero-G effect. And I was watching the special features earlier today before I watched the movie, and they also did a neat thing with filming the fire to get it to look liquid, because they had asked the astronauts what it was like to come in on re-entry, and they said it was something like being inside of a fluorescent tube being lit up, and so that was kind of a interesting but yet not terribly descriptive description of the actual descent. So they did their best artistically, which I always think it's neat when fire is filmed like that liquid motion. Like they did the same thing in The Matrix, and they had a blow up inside of a building, and you see the fire come out, and then it just slows down and just looks liquid. And so they did this in this film to try to make it look as much like the inside of a fluorescent tube as they could. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing to do. And I was also reading that some of the views of the Earth in the window when they were looking out was actually the photographs from the Apollo 8 mission that Jim Lovell took. So I thought that was a neat way to incorporate some actual NASA, footage and photos in the film and make it look realistic. And if you look back at old footage from the 60s and 70s, they didn't do like CGI, but they did artistic animations where they had artistic drawings and animations of spacecraft landing and engines firing and rockets traveling to try to give people an idea of what was happening, but it was clearly an artistic rendering and animation to show show those things. So I thought that's a neat way to try to, bring it to life for the audience at home. But nowadays we can, have much more sophisticated CGI and renderings when we're trying to show the general public what's going on with spacecraft. But you go back and watch some old footage, and you can find these on YouTube, and it will show these artistic animations that I think are really fascinating. With that, I do have a few things. This is probably the last go-round.
Repeater, timeout for 15 seconds. Timeout, timer, reset. Repeater enabled.
Buzzer alert.
Okay, looks like we're back. The timeout kicks in after midnight, the official end of the net. This is WB50ZL, KF5PDS. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Yes, I did. It out, so I guess I get the Bozo Award tonight. And I'll be more careful this time. I'll quickly add what I was going to add. So I was adding some cameo information since this is the last go-round. I was mentioning the cameo that Jim Lovell made at the end when he's shaking Tom Hanks' hand on the aircraft carrier. They asked him if he wanted to be an admiral, and he said no. I retired as a captain, so a captain I will be. So he wore his actual Navy captain's uniform for the cameo. And also when Jim Lovell is discussing future funding, when they're going into the rocket build station, and he's talking with the U.S. Senator. The U.S. Senator was noted producer and director Roger Corman. which Ron Howard cast as thank you for casting him in Corman's Grand Theft Auto in 1977. And then the other two cameos that are of note were Ron Howard's parents. His mother played Blanche Level, and his father played the priest at the end of the film when they're all pensively watching the splashdown footage for them to come home. He is the priest sitting on the couch. So those are the things I wanted to add. Sorry I had time to have the repeater, and I'll return it to you. This is KF5PDF, back to net.
All right, yeah, both of his parents were established actors, especially his dad, who was in like dozens and dozens of films as a character actor. He and Ron both got their start in 1956, a movie called Frontier Woman. Rance Howard is credited, and little Ronnie Howard is just a uncredited extra, but that's they got their start together there in 1956. All right, KG5APL, Patrick, go ahead.
This KG5APL, I know we're getting late, so I'll just keep it super brief. I guess two things that I did not like were pretty much a lot of the exterior shots of the spacecraft, but like it's been said already, but a lot of the RCS going off and the pitch yaw and rolling happening. That seems a little bit excessive, but then again, what do we know? And then if Tom can not like the roll paint, I can make fun or not like the rocket launch sounds. We've all heard live rocket launches, either recordings of them or actually seen them as well, and they sound very different than is always portrayed in films, and I think this one did not do that very well. Love the sound of a real rocket launch. This one, not so much. But two things I did love were the interiors of the spacecraft, all the angles and orientations that the astronauts were at, especially the scene where they're plugging in the new air scrubber. Plug it in and you see all of them and just completely, well, they're all, well, yeah, just different angles. And then also just the sets themselves, the mission control set inside the spacecraft, all the knobs, the switches, the buttons, the lights. It was really, really great. Okay, wanted to be brief. Back to net control, it's KG5APL.
All right, that brings us to the end. Does anybody want to say anything else? Just come with your call sign and we'll go around. Please come down.
KG5P.
KE5ICX.
Okay, KG5P, Mike, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Brenda. This is a fantastic net. I haven't seen this movie in 25 years, but it's been a great discussion. Great discussion. And I really enjoyed it. KG5P.
W5FC.
All right, thank you. KE5ICX. Final thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, Brenda. All I wanted to say was that, Tom Hanks, I think, was inspired by this film, and he went into directing after this and produced that wonderful series From Earth to the Moon and then Band of Brothers and other things. I think this unleashed a monster that created these wonderful stories that could be extended out, particularly in television. From Earth to the Moon, next to this movie, is my favorite series of all time, and it follows in Apollo 13's the movie footsteps, and I really appreciate that. It created another prodigy. That's it for me. Oh, and the movie next week will be This Island Earth, which was, by the way, was on, what was it? Geez, I'm getting tired. And Punchy on Sanguli tonight. So we'll have that as the movie. It's available online. KE5ICX.
All right, I think we did that one before, but it's been a long time. It's certainly up there, one of the better ones. Thanks to everybody that participated tonight. We had, let me count, were 12 of us. So, good group, good comments. Thank you so much for your participation. All right, this is WB5OZL Clear.